Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Good evening, everybody. This is the City Council regular meeting agenda for Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. And before we start, I'd like to have the City Clerk, Melissa, read the AB 361 information, please.
The city has returned to hybrid public meetings pursuant to AB 361, which allows for a deviation from the teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act. Residents now have the option to attend the meeting in person or to participate remotely. To participate remotely, residents can live stream the meeting at www.prcity.com/YouTube and call 805-865-7276 to provide public comment via phone. The phone line will open just prior to the start of the meeting and remain open throughout the meeting to ensure the opportunity to comment on each item heard by the council. Written public comments can be submitted via email to cityclerk@prcity.com prior to 12 noon on the day of the council meeting to be posted as an addendum to the agenda. If submitting written public comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item by number or name. City council meetings will be live streamed during the meeting and also available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and if we would all stand, led by Councilman Rodman, and please remain standing for the invocation by Rabbi Gordon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I would like to begin my invocation with a little inspiration. I was recently told the story of a mother who wanted to teach her child about life. She boiled up 3 pots of water. In one she put a carrot, in one she put an egg, and in one she put coffee beans. After removing the carrot, it became soft. After removing the egg, it was hard. After removing the coffee beans, the water became coffee. She explained to her son a lesson in life. Some people are tough, and when they are hit with challenges, they become soft. Some people are soft, and when they are faced with challenges, they become hard and tough. Some people take on those challenges and change their environment and the world around them. This is the lesson of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which commemorates the miracle that God did for the Jewish people more than 2,000 years ago in a miraculous victory that brought freedom of religion and the freedom to express and be proud of our identities after a period when these rights were being withheld and threatened. This Thursday evening in Jewish homes and in public spaces around the world, we will light the first candle of Hanukkah. There are 8 nights of Hanukkah. Each night we light the menorah as it's getting dark at dusk, and we add a light for each consecutive night. The message is twofold. During darkness, a little bit of light goes a long way and dispels much darkness. The second message is that after you've added light, your job is not done. If you would like to make change in the world, you need to add more light each day. Spread the light. Dispel the darkness with one little light at a time, and thus change the environment and the entire world. This is something that requires constant work. With that in mind, we pray. Almighty God, Master of the universe, the members of this esteemed body, the Paso Robles City Council, convene here today to fulfill one of the 7 commandments that you issued to Noah and his family after the Great Flood, the commandment that all societies be governed by just laws. Grant, Almighty God, that the members of this council constantly realize that by enacting just laws and regulations, they are doing your will. I ask that you bless the mayor and all our council members with the peace of mind to fulfill these sacred duties. Let them be inspired to serve with integrity and justice, always acting with wisdom and compassion. Help them lead our city according to your will so that all citizens are served fairly. Let their decisions reflect the values of truth, kindness, humility, and charity. And let us pray in the words of King David in the book of Psalms, chapter 122, may there be peace within your walls, serenity within your mansions. May there be peace and harmony in this great city of Paso Robles, across this great state, in the Holy Land of Israel, and across the entire globe. May it be your will, Almighty God, that the efforts of the council members be successful, empowering all the individuals in this great city to be decent human beings, considerate of others, reverent of you, and ready to do their bit towards the ultimate goal of a perfect world in which your presence will be manifest. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bausch.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Roden.
Here.
Councilmember Strong.
Present.
Mayor Hammond.
Here. And then we'll have staff introductions next, starting with Madam
Melissa
Clerk.
Boyer, City Clerk, joined by Shauna Howenstein, Civic Engagement Coordinator, and Karen Jackson, IT Technician.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Angelica Fortin, Community
City Services Director.
Chris Huon, Assistant City Manager.
Frida Berman, Public Works Director.
Brian Cornell, Administrative Services Director.
Paul Patty, Fire Marshal.
Darren Nash, City Planner.
Shirley Mooney.
Mark Scandella, Airport Manager. Jonathan Stonetta.
Katie Murphy.
David Add, Water Resources Manager.
Ty Lewis, City Manager.
Okay.
Elizabeth Hall, City Attorney.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, and moving on with presentations. Number one, we have Caltrans quarterly report. Gus Kahuri, is Gus going to be online? Gus, can you hear us?
Yep. Yes, I can. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council, and members of the public. Gus Corey, State Legislative Advocate for the City of Paso Robles. Pleasure to be with you this evening. Just wanted to provide a brief update on state legislative activities and some grant opportunities that we're pursuing to improve infrastructure within the city. Starting back, you may recollect, for those of you that participated in our May 5th town hall meeting with members of the Transportation Commission and Caltrans Director Tony Tavares, where we showcased some of our needs, the Union Road intersection in particular. We made quite the impression, and that's thanks to the hard work by Public Works staff and the council. We made quite the impression on CTC Chair Leanne Eager and Caltrans Director Tony Tavares, who are committed to helping us bring that project to fruition. And so Public Works staff has been working diligently with Caltrans District 4. Very much appreciate District Director Scott Eads and his leadership on his coordination with trying to get us sponsored for a Senate Bill 1 Cycle 4 submission. This is a competitive grant opportunity that would go before the California Transportation Commission, and we would hopefully, with the sponsorship, be eligible for an award in the middle of June of 2025, I believe. That schedule is not yet set. The CTC has a kickoff workshop meeting on December 14th, which we will be participating in and providing feedback on the guideline development to hopefully make us even more competitive. And so things are looking fairly optimistic on that front. We'll keep working. In addition, we are working with our Central Coast delegation. The Highway 46 is a regional priority. SLOCOG has helped to make that clear. Assemblymember Don Addis, who's chair of the Central Coast Legislative Caucus, is looking to convening a meeting with the Central Coast delegation, which does include Speaker Robert Rivas. And they're going to assess how they can further help our efforts. Despite the current budget picture, the legislature just dealt with a $31.5 billion budget deficit for fiscal year 22-23. Also, Treasurer Ma is saying that we're not sure if we've collected the $42 billion worth of tax receipts that the governor was anticipating. They're still tabulating those receipts. The tax collection deadline was extended twice to October 16th and then November 16th. So we should have some word there. There is a projected budget deficit of $14 billion for fiscal year 24-25, but there still could be, despite all of that, an opportunity to use existing resources to help as an insurance policy to make sure that our project comes to fruition. So we're working collectively. Very much appreciate City Manager Lewis's availability and his tireless work in going up and down the state with me to go to the CTC meetings, to attend various conferences, to try to highlight the project. So we'll keep working with the council and keep you posted on how the council can engage when it's an opportune time. So I'll stop right there, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or council members may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Gus from the council? None? Anyone from the public wishing to ask any questions to Gus Gahert? Very good. All right. Thank you, Gus. Appreciate the report.
Thank you so much.
And next, we have general public comments. This is a time that people can address the council on items within the council's purview, but not scheduled on this agenda tonight. Any persons wishing to speak would need to have a card given to the clerk, and you'll have 3 minutes. Looks like we have one already. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Rivera, P.O. Box 3134. I wanted to make some comments to those of you who may have read or heard of my complaint that was lodged against Ty Lewis. I want everybody to understand, me, my mouth to everyone's ears. Everything I said in that complaint is exactly what happened. Exactly. And it'll be corroborated, I believe, over time. But what I want to say to each one of you is that to have Ty Lewis sitting here while this investigation is going on without putting him on paid administrative leave, I think is an insult. I was assaulted. There's no excuse in our system of government for people who believe someone might be divisive, is what I've heard, to be physically abused in a public setting or any setting whatsoever. That's not the way our system is set up. Our people should feel free to come forward to a public meeting in a public place and sit and listen and observe and not be in fear that they're going to be attacked. And to have that as our city manager is outrageous. I've been serving in city and county government for over 35 years in various ways, never making one dime from my service, not one dime. And to have this happen to me and to my family, my wife's scared now. She's scared. She doesn't know what's going to come plowing through our house because I objected to what happened to me. Yes, and I'm upset. You're darn right I'm upset. And for those on this dais who would make insinuations that I'm just attempting to try to get the city in legal trouble is outrageous. I would never do that. I would never accuse anybody of something had they not done it, ever. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm made of. I don't lie. And so for this council to sit there and have been quiet, I never got one call from any of you asking me how I was, what the circumstances were, nothing. Totally ignoring me, just like you ignored me during the time when our past mayor passed. I at least ran for the office, and I was totally ignored. Well, that's fine. That's okay. I'm fine with that. But I want you to know that this is not good for this city. This is going to cast a shadow, a cloud over this city.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Dale Guston. I wasn't going to say something, but I went over the transcript from the last meeting, and there seemed to be some confusion in the reading the clerk's notes. When I read the transcript, I understood that Ty Lewis asked the issue of the parking if the council wanted it brought back for a formal address on the action on it. And the transcript said that John Hammond said yes. So I'm confused. I understood that to mean that you're going to put it on an agenda item for a first reading when you finally get all the details worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online, Melissa?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Move on then, items to be deferred. Mr. City Manager Ty Lewis, do we have anything on? No.
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Then we're on to consent calendar. These are items that are considered routine but not requiring separate discussion. However, anybody on the dais that would like to pull one for discussion and or questions for staff can certainly do that, or any of the public can do that as well. So I'll start first with council. Anybody have anything to pull on items 1 through 6, I believe, isn't it? Yeah. None?
I have one question, John.
Okay,
So,
Councilman Gregory.
it's just for clarification on item 7. Has there been any changes in that map, or is that the one that was originally presented?
What was the question, sir? I didn't hear.
I wanted to find out if the approval of the final Pioneer map, was there any changes to that, or is it the way we last saw it? It's been a while.
David Athy.
David Athy, city engineer. I can answer that question. No changes to that map have been made, other than we clarified an easement for a water line to make sure we had access to it until sometime in the future it's abandoned.
Right. Thank you very much, David.
Okay, Chris, go ahead. Councilman Roush.
Just a note for the record that email exchange occurred between myself and City Manager Elizabeth Hull for item I-5, and it was resolved satisfactory.
What item was that, Chris?
I-5.
5. So you want to go ahead and pull that then, or just?
No, for public,
just for information. Okay, good. All right. Anybody in the public within wishing to pull anything for discussion? Seeing none, then we'll come back then to council for direction and or action on consent items 1 through 7.
Mayor Hammond?
Councilman
I'd like
Gregory.
to move that we approve items 1 through 8. I don't know why I have 8 on it.
Is it 8?
7.
7.
It says 8.
All right.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Gregory, second by Bausch. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the question. Melissa.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Bausch?
Aye.
Councilmember Roden?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Hammond?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you. And Mr. City Manager Ty Lewis, would you report on items approved on consent calendar, please?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1 is approval of development plan PD 22-20, which is a vesting and of tentative parcel map PR 22-004 and a conditional use permit for 2930 Union Road. Excuse me. I jumped ahead to public hearings. Item number 1 is approval of the November 21st, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Item number 2 is receipt of the advisory body minutes. Item number 3 is reaffirmation of Resolution 23-018, which approves remote or hybrid remote meetings per Assembly Bill 361. Item number 4 is receipt of a warrant register. Item number 5 is the approval of an airport lease agreement for Lot 42. Item number 6 is purchase of advanced metering infrastructure equipment for AMI project, which is our automatic Badger meters. Item number 7 is approval of the final Pioneer map, PR 17-01333.
Question.
Councilman Bausch.
On the credit copy of the agenda, we do not have receipt of the treasury report. Is that on the electronic copy, we have item 4, receipt of treasurer's report.
It would be the receipt of the warrant register?
We have item 5 as receipt of the warrant register, which appears as item 4 on the paper copy.
There is an issue with the PowerPoint list on the screen. What was posted and published on the agenda is correct.
So do I owe
There is-
Councilmember Gregory an apology?
Yes.
I'm sure that I owe you an apology that the treasurer's
You can
report is
apologize.
listed up
I
there.
think I owe Steve an apology here. There was 8.
Okay. Total of 8. Okay.
So how do we want to correct that?
This is just the PowerPoint, sir. It's, the agenda is correct.
That's correct. So the items that you're approving are 1 through 7 as they appear on the published agenda. And we'll just note for the record that there is no item for receipt of treasurer's report. That was just a mistake on the PowerPoint.
So we pulled the treasurer's report.
It was not ever on this
It doesn't
agenda,
exist.
sir.
It was not
It's
in
never
the
there.
agenda as published. So it's just an error on the PowerPoint. It's not substantive. What matters is what's in your agenda, and what you approved is are approving and the city manager is reporting out are items 1 through 7 as they appear in the published staff report.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I said. I thought it was 7 items, so. Okay. Very good. All right, moving on then, we have the public hearing, I believe, is next. We're going to open up a public hearing, and item 1 is the approval of a development plan, PD 22-20, oak tree removal. And who would have that report?
So, Mr. Mayor, this is an item that was continued from the previous agenda. We are going to need to continue it again tonight. The city attorney may want you to open the public hearing just for public comment, and then we'll want to continue to a date to be determined in the future. We'll have to renotice this item.
Very good. All right, Elizabeth, do you think then we'll just go ahead and call for public comment on the item?
Yep, go ahead and open the item, call for public comment. It should be noticed that if you speak during this public hearing today and the item is not modified, someone wouldn't be able to speak again in the future. You only get one opportunity to speak at a public hearing, but if there is someone present today who would like to speak, we want to give them that opportunity.
Very good. Start with the council. Anybody on council like to make a comment on this item 1? Seeing none, then we'll open it up to anyone in the public wishing to make comment on item 1, public hearing. Seeing none, then we'll go ahead, then bring it back. And do we need a motion then to continue again?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Councilman Strong?
Second.
Councilman Bausch. Then we're going to continue to a date certain or next?
Undetermined date. It will be renoticed.
Very good. Thank you, Warren. Call for the question, Melissa.
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Councilmember Bausch?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Roden?
Aye.
Mayor Hammond?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Very good. Moving on to item 2, introduction, first reading of ordinance adopting 2022 California Building Code with local amendments. Who is going to have that report? Warren?
Charlie Maloney, our interim chief building official, will
Charlie.
be making a brief presentation.
Mm-hmm. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is to adopt the 2022 Building and Fire Code with local amendments. It's part of a 3-year cycle. This is how it works at the state level on the 3-year cycle. It goes through this process at the state level, and then the 2022 codes were adopted January 1st, 2023 statewide. However, the local modifications are not. For the 2019 update, we had workshops with the building liaison committee, the local group, and made many. There were many changes in that cycle. Either the amendments were absorbed by the code or were no longer relevant. So for the 2022 update, the changes are really pretty minor. Coordination, which is just updating from 2019 to 2022. The deletion section, so there was an amendment from 180 days for a permit to expire, extending it to a year. And in the 2022 code, it is a year, so that's absorbed. And then there's a soils exception from 500 square feet up to 1,000 square feet based on single family residence, light wood construction, and light metal construction with parameters. And then the plumbing code insulation, that in the 2019 changes, this was removed from the code, but we'd like to bring that back because there's a lot of confusion in the design community, and it's specific to insulating plumbing pipes under 2 inches in unconditioned space due to climatic conditions. So the options are to take no action, introduce the first reading of the ordinance, adopting the 2022 California Building Code with amendments, and schedule a second reading and public hearing pursuant to Government Code Section 6066, or refer back to staff for additional analysis.
Okay. And that's your report at this point, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll open up for questions from the council to the building official. Anybody wishing to ask any questions? Okay. We're going to have fire also. Paul, are you?
Just here if there's any questions on any of it.
Okay, copy that. Why don't we do this real quick? Let's talk with Paul, our fire marshal. Are there any significant changes, though, that you see that we should be aware of from the fire side?
No, we've adopted, Paul Petty, Fire Marshal, City Paso Robles, and everything that we have already adopted from previous versions, we're still keeping.
Still the same.
As far as fire side, we're looking good there. The plumbing one is the one that we asked to have come back because it's in the plumbing code, but we refer to it in the fire code also. It's vague when you look at it up under the plumbing code. And so the way that we used to have it in our municipal codes was a better interpretation of it. We'd just like to have that back. So we're not asking for really any changes. We just want to clarify it because there is confusion with the developers.
Okay, very good. All right, that's my question. We'll open up then to the public. Anybody from the public wishing to have any questions to staff on this item? Seeing none, then we'll go ahead and bring it back then for discussion and or questions and direction.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that we introduce for first reading of ordinance XXXX, adopting the 2022 California Building Code with local amendments, and schedule a second reading and public hearing pursuant to Government Code Section 6066.
Second by Gregory.
Okay, we have a first by Strong, second by Gregory. Any discussion on the item? All right, we'll call for the question.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Bausch?
Aye.
Councilmember Roden?
Aye.
Mayor Hammond?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. That's the last item in there. And we'll move to discussion items. The first on the discussion item list then is the approval of the Paso Robles strategic plan to address homelessness. And Angelica, you have the item for us, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Angelica Fortin, Community Services Director. In April of 2022, you adopted goals and strategic priorities to guide the city forward over the next 2 fiscal years. Using public input, housing and homelessness was identified as one of 6 goal areas, and creating a regional homeless strategic plan was highlighted as a desired outcome. To move forward, the city partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to complete an unhoused future study, a study of possible, probable, and preferable futures and methods that can help communities manage uncertainties. This study and the countywide plan to address homelessness serve to help guide the development of a plan for Paso Robles. Working with the JL Group, our consultants Bill Whalen and Mike Hamill guided us through the strategic planning process. Tonight, they are here with us to share more information about the plan. And with that, I would like to introduce Bill Whalen.
Waylon, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelica. Mayor, members of council, it's my honor to be here with you today, members of the Paso Robles community. I started this journey with you about 20 months ago. Many of you were on the dais then when, under the vision of your city manager, we started with the Future Studies Task Force. And through that, we learned many things. And one of the things we learned was there was a strong desire from your community to have a concrete plan put into place, because this is an acute problem in your community. And we heard that loud and clear. You heard that loud and clear. And back in May, you authorized us to move forward with actually developing a concrete operational plan that will help to address the issue within your community. And this evening, I stand before you to present that plan to you. As Angelica mentioned, my name is Bill Whalen. I'm here with my partner, Mike Hamill, and we are with JL Group. JL Group is a firm based in Southern California that provides consulting services to local government. We do many things. One of the things we do is strategic planning, and Mike and I, we do all types of strategic planning. And as I talked to you about, I think the last time I spoke with you, but also to our working group that we put together, he and I are not homeless experts. What we are is we do facilitation, we do strategic planning, and part of that is to bring the people in the room who are the experts. And as we get through this plan here this evening, I think that you'll see that I believe we did a very good job of doing that. So again, in early 2022, we did the Future Studies Task Force. In May of 2023. We started this process, which, oh, sorry, I did you my apologies. And that task force that we did for this strategic plan, we had members of the former Unhoused Future Studies Task Force. We had people from the Paso Robles community with lived experiences, and then key stakeholder agencies and organizations. And this is a great visual representation of the people that assisted in this process. And my hat's off to Angelica and all of those involved in putting this together. This is a great representation of your community. And I want to pause here for a second. I know we have some people in the room that were part of this. And, you know, I want to give you my sincere thanks because I saw that the heart and soul that people put in this. And I know, council, many of you stop by from time to time to see the progress of our meetings. And it was very impressive to see the people work together and to see them really put forth the effort. This is a community that cares, and I think that that came across loud and clear through that process. This next slide takes us through a little bit of the timeline for what we went through. The first part of this was to help develop our focus areas, which I'll get to in a minute. We did a SWOT analysis. We looked at, in regards to the topic of homelessness, what is the city of Paso Robles doing right now? What are our strengths? What are areas that we could improve upon, our weaknesses? Do we have opportunities that we want to explore or exploit? And are there threats on the horizon? And partially those threats, we looked at not only what were the known experiences or known to the people in the room, but we took the information from the Future Studies Task Force and brought that to bear also. Through that analysis, we were able to come up with 6 focus areas that we believe represent the framework of this plan and the areas that we should best focus on. We took this to your community through a couple of town hall meetings. And again, very impressive with the level of turnout we received. Significant number of people from each community meeting that we held. We took the information we learned from that, we brought it back to the working group. From there, we were able to identify goals. We worked with each of you in our 221 meetings to understand your priorities for this body, to see what it is that you wanted to see in the plan. And all of that went together to help to identify our goals. And then once those were developed, we went back to city staff because at the end of the day, this is a plan that the city staff is actually going to have to implement. And so we wanted to make sure that what we were discussing, what we were thinking was something that was realistic and that was manageable. And so it went through that process. We finally came back to the city council in the ad hoc committee and presented. And then lastly, we back before Thanksgiving, we gave the final presentation to our working group. Here you'll see our focus areas. You know, you could, and was evident as we first started this, there's a lot of areas that touch on the topic of homelessness. So it was actually, as simple as this may look on your screen, this was a little bit of a challenge trying to put everything into the proper category and not have something that was so large and cumbersome that it would be unmanageable. And although it's almost a footnote at the bottom of the slide, I'll talk about it more later in this presentation. But the fact that your plan aligns with the countywide plan, I think, is very important. And our focus areas came out nicely in line with the county plan. I've said this before that homelessness in essence is an emergency. All emergencies are local in nature. You, as the Paso Robles City Council, this is your topic to decide with how you want. But we also have to recognize that homelessness is not just limited to this city. It's a nationwide problem. And especially in this region, it's important that we understand what the rest of the area is doing and that we all are in line and we're all marching in the same direction. Moving into our focus areas, programs and services was the first one. And it really is no coincidence that the first goal is that we believe a homeless services manager needs to be hired to manage not only this plan, but the city's response to homelessness. This was something that came out of our Future Studies Task Force, even though that really wasn't the goal of the task force. That was more a future look forward, but there was a strong want and desire for a single point of contact at the city who would be responsible, who would be accountable, who people could speak with. But more importantly, we believe that there needs to be a person who is laser focused on accomplishing this plan. And as I'll get to later in this plan, you'll see that I think it can pay dividends. You'll see that also part of this focus area is leveraging our relationships with our neighbors to make sure that we provide economies of scale and, again, that we're all moving in the same direction on this topic. The next focus area, this is one that when you talk to people about homelessness, between addiction and mental illness, these are the two top areas that I think if you survey people, you'll hear them say they believe impacts homelessness. The key points to take away from this focus area, and I didn't mention it before, my apologies, we only in our presentation here have the goals listed. There's actually fine-tuned objectives that are in the actual package that you have in front of you and that are part of the plan. And I'm giving the high-level look at that. But the key point in behavioral health is we need to do really a gap analysis. What are our needs out there? And what is it going to take to meet these needs? How can we leverage partnerships? How can we be creative with getting additional resources? And how can we be agile and really get out, not just from a preventative standpoint, a prophylactic standpoint, but how can we be surgical and get into the community and really help those people experiencing a crisis moment related to behavioral health? The default in many locations is simply to call 911 and have the police respond. And as we know, that's not an appropriate response. And I mean that with all the affection in the world to my law enforcement brothers and sisters out there, but really they're not the experts in behavioral health. We need to have this surgical ability with people who are the experts to go in and help those people in crisis. Again, education, outreach, and training. This is about a holistic wrap-around approach. We didn't want this plan to simply address things that are already occurring, but we want to look at how can we prevent homelessness in the beginning. And not only that, how do we help communicate with those who aren't homeless? There are many people in your community that don't understand what the city's doing, don't understand what services are available. And there are many people in this community that know people who are at risk of becoming homeless. So part of this component is making sure that everybody understands what's available out there to them, whether they are experiencing homeless or at risk of becoming homeless or know somebody that's becoming homeless. I want to put an exclamation point on goal 3.2. When we were doing our community outreach, we heard a very poignant story of a young woman who became homeless in this community. She went through challenges in high school, through family illness. She fell into drug addiction and is now living in the riverbed. And this person didn't have the education and opportunities at an early age that might have prevented that. And that was something that we brought back to our task force, and it was important to them to make sure that a discussion about that was included in this plan as well. Housing continuum, and housing is something that we certainly hear quite a bit about. It's important. We understand that not everybody who's homeless wants shelter, but it's important that everybody has the opportunity to be sheltered, whether it's an emergency shelter, it's transitional, or it's long-term housing. Housing is a very important component of the plan. Again, when we look at this from a holistic wraparound standpoint, housing's on the back end of people who have become homeless. It's not necessarily preventative, but it's a very important piece to the overarching effort to mitigate this challenge in your community. There are barriers, no question there are barriers to providing effective housing, but it's worthy to have in the plan and it's worthy to address. Show me the dollar, right? This is the part where it's great to have a plan, but how are we going to pay for it? When I said that having that homeless services manager is very important, I think this is an area where you're going to see it pay dividends. There is, and I've heard from some of you, in fact, that are more closely connected with the state legislature than I am, that there is movement afoot to provide grant funding to local municipalities from the state. While it's important that we are aligned with the county, obviously, as I mentioned, counties generally, when it comes to grants from the state, serve as pass-through entities to local government. So the state has a pot of money, they go to the counties, we have this pot of money, who are you going to give it to? Well, having, number one, this plan, but also somebody who is your advocate, somebody who is paying attention to what's going on out there, somebody who's looking for the money and making sure that you are taking all the appropriate steps to find the money is what we believe will end up, as I mentioned, paying dividends for hiring of that homeless services manager. Under our policies and procedures component of this plan, this really is about developing the goals and objectives that ensure a balanced approach. Keeps in mind that we don't want to create solutions, or we don't want to implement solutions that create more problems. So it's looking at our policies and procedures, making sure that we're keeping track of what we're doing. Is what we're doing in line with the objectives and the goals of this plan? So the initial fiscal impact of this plan as presented would be the $200,000 of hiring the homeless services manager. Obviously, as this plan moves forward, there would be more costs associated with it, depending on what, if anything, council decided that they wanted to implement. As mentioned on the last bullet point, the council, you have the last say in the matter. So you have this plan, you would have this manager who would do this first year analysis, and I'm going to talk about the what we would think would be first year accomplishments, but they're the ones that person will be the one that comes to you with the justification for further funding, and then you'll have the say on whether or not you believe it's appropriately in line with the plan and appropriately in line with your community's goals and objectives. I want to take just a minute to talk about accountability. And we believe, and I'm not going to, I wasn't in the room for other area around here that did plans, but we purposely chose not to put specific values in. We want to reduce something by this number. We want to increase it by this number. And really, the reason for that is because we don't have a good baseline right now. We've done a lot, you have done a lot to tackle this problem. But up until this point, it's been somewhat piecemeal. And we don't really know what our baseline is. And so until you develop your baseline, it's really hard to realistically come up with achievable numbers. We believe that after this plan is in place, and after you have a person that is, as I mentioned, laser focused on the plan, they will be able to really understand the needs and what the gaps are and what can realistically be done from a financial standpoint, from a city staff standpoint, from a community tolerance standpoint, and then you can develop the key performance indicators to hold this city accountable for achieving this plan.
bring it back.
Thank you, Bill. So with that, the recommendation tonight is that you approve the Paso Robles strategic plan to address homelessness. I am available for questions, clarifications, as is our team. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Angelica. Start with the council. Any questions for Angelica or Bill? Start off with Councilman Strong.
Yes, I'm wondering because this seems to concentrate very much on especially people who are mentally ill or addiction people. And it does not in any way address those who have been priced out of their homes and have nothing wrong except the fact that they are in the hospitality industry and earning minimum wage or slightly above and cannot afford rents of over $2,000 a month. I'm wondering if there's any plan to proceed to look into that aspect of the homelessness because of, or even what percentage it might be.
There are objectives included that touch on workforce housing and the need for workforce housing. And if you look, let me just pull up here. Forgive me. I am looking for it now, but I'm sorry, it's quite a large document. But there is a particular objective specifically under policies and procedures that is supporting the economic development strategic plan. When that comes before you, you'll see that there's a large push for supporting workforce housing. It was identified in the working group that one of the other issues that we have with housing is the people who do the work, who do the mental health services, who provide assistance in these areas also might have trouble affording housing in the area. So we want to make sure that we're addressing all of those issues. There's also a particular focus on the housing continuum. We have numbers that tell us or give us some targets for housing, but it's not broken down as granularly as we would like. So when we talk about baselines, that's one of the baselines we would like to try and establish, but that does also include workforce and affordable housing at various levels. Right now, we have a guideline for affordable housing, but not for very low housing, low, extremely low housing. So we're looking to do some work in that area.
Okay. I'm wondering.
Yeah, and also barriers to affordable housing. You'll see there's an objective addressing that as well.
Well, I understand about affordable housing, but the existing housing that is having rents raised dramatically, is there anything in the plan that addresses how to either limit or how to, or what's happening in the marketplace or in society that is causing these drastic increases?
Not specifically, but we have addressed the need to look at all of our city's policies to make recommendations to council moving forward. What we're asking for is someone who can really spend that time doing that homework and bringing that before council with our homeless services manager.
Okay, and have we looked at all at the fact that Section 8 housing has such a long waiting list of years for people to get any assistance?
We did, yeah, that is an issue.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Fred. Anyone else? Christopher? Yeah.
Well, there are different types of housing, and forgive me because I also am not a homelessness expert, but I'm learning very quickly. So we have emergency housing, which is something like what ECHO provides with night-by-night shelter or with their 90-day program. The 90-day program in some ways can be considered transitional. You're getting people into more permanent housing. And then, of course, we have HASLO in the room tonight that provides a pathway to homelessness. So it's this kind of in-between housing, getting people to stable housing, to more permanent housing. So transitional housing is not, potentially, not home ownership specifically, but a place where people can sustain their own housing.
Okay. Let's talk about funding. The report that we were given looks like it relies on general fund money for the first few years.
Correct.
Is that a long-term solution?
Yeah, actually it is.
So I think that would be one of the challenges that we would need to assess is what's the appetite for Paso Robles to support this versus some of the other priorities that Robles have identified. Each of us, I'm sure, I can tell our own stories about what the priorities are, whether that might be roads or parking or, what other items, but that would have to, as this comes back, the salary that was identified, the $200,000, for example, if our median wage in the county is $70,000, $200,000 for somebody that might be on the verge of homelessness themselves might seem a tad high. It would be difficult for me to approve that wage this evening. But I'm sure it's an inclusive wage. I'm sure the person, you can back all kinds of statistics as to why that person would be worth that wage. But when we're talking about aiding the kind of person who would benefit from these services, there's a disconnect there that I think needs to be addressed. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. The other services, and this is one of the things I've observed with the city over the years, we start off rather small, if $200,000 is small, and then we build into other costs of the program. I'm looking at these and just sort of making a mental note. I'm definitely not an expert, but by the time we get done, we're in the millions of dollars.
So if I could just share, right now, currently, the city does not have a homeless services coordinator or manager or staff member dedicated to working on homelessness. I'm doing some of the work myself. Fire, police department are doing a lot of the work as well, as is our city manager. The plan is very comprehensive. It is a holistic approach, but a lot of that work is building relationships, making sure that we are working in tandem with the county, that we're looking for opportunities for funding when they come up and when they present themselves. This person would also be managing grants and working with the county to apply for appropriate grants. The $200,000 is actually not only the wage, it's also a operating budget for the position for year one.
Sure, and I alluded to that, and I recognize that. I think it's a great plan. I'm not disparaging the plan. I think it's a great plan, and I think on page 11 we note that we know what we want to do, but we don't yet know what we will have the capacity, i.e. resources, funding, et cetera, to accomplish. It kind of seems to me we're going to hire a person and then ask them to write their own job description and tell us what they're going to do. That seems like an awful big ask to hand somebody a fairly large check and ask them to create their own ticket. I think we can come up with a better, or at least I hope we would be able to come up with a better way to do that. I don't think I can go back to constituents and say, yeah, we're going to have this position, and then we're going to let them tell us what they're going to do and come back and give us a report at the end of the year. That would be difficult for me.
No, by no means. And I would say that this strategic plan is actually the job description. It's very comprehensive, and honestly, this is going to take a very special person to be able to accomplish the goals and the objectives in the plan. There are some elements in the plan, for example, park ranger program. And so when we say that we're going to come back to city council and that there's certain elements we're not certain what the resources might be, it's alluding to items like that. A ranger program could be 2 people, or it could be 4 people, or it could be 6 people. So the scope of that program may vary based on the desires of city council and our community.
So is that, and I don't mean to be argumentative here, but so is that like mission creep? So we go from 1 person to 4 people or 6 people, and are they also earning $200,000?
Depends on what city council, how much of this plan city council would like to see come to fruition.
So that's the part I'm concerned with. I don't want to sign off on having 1 person at $200,000, and then all of a sudden by the time we're into this, we have to hire more people. And I'd kind of like to know what the whole enchilada looks like rather than starting off and then seeing what else is on the menu that we have to buy as well. I want to see what the whole package looks like. We'll come back to that. Thank you.
Councilman Gregory?
Yeah, I'm going to reserve my comments for after public comments, but we did discuss this in great detail, so I'd like to add some comments to help you with that. So after the public comment. Thank you.
Okay. No further comments then or questions from the council?
Oh, I have a question.
Sure,
just to follow up with Mr. Bausch. I understand what his, I think I do, correct me if I'm wrong, what his query is about with the 200,000. I think I question that as well. Maybe it just originates with not having, or at least what I didn't see in the plan was a budget specific, and having a proper breakdown of what the salary is, what the costs are, implementing different strategies along the way and the costs for that. And that might clarify some of our questions. With that, Mr. Bausch? Yeah.
Okay. My main question, again, this is basically what you're asking for us tonight. Looks like to endorse the strategic plan, for homeless. And basically there is no financial connection at this point in time.
So by approving the strategic plan, when we go to budget for the next 2-year budget cycle, staff would include that in the budget package. So when we start to set goals and priorities for the next 2 fiscal years, that would be included as one of council's priorities. So you would be actually voting on that in the future.
And the job duties, goals, and priorities of that particular person would be delineated very succinctly at that point. Basically.
We can. I would say, though, the strategic plan would be one of the major components of that.
Council members, just to augment this, when it comes to any kind of classification or creating any type of position, those are brought back to council for approval. So in this particular situation, what we're asking council to do is, A, do you agree with public feedback and the committee that came together and said, as we see it as members of the community and as subject matter experts, professionals in the field, do you agree with those? And if you don't, you can make, alterations as you see fit. But this is a guiding document to help you as we move into subsequent budget cycles. If we don't find grant funding or other ways to pay for this and augment the budget, that is this something the council wants to do, because it will require significant resources, which have yet to be identified, based upon the Chinese menu of sorts that you can choose from to implement. And as Angelica pointed out, and Mr. Whalen, it could be anywhere from, hey, in the first couple of years, we just want to focus on X, Y, and Z, and then we want to move into a park ranger program, and you can give us direction to bring back a budget that what that would look like and how many people we recommend. And of course, you retain autonomy to modify that as you see it. So tonight, we're not actually asking you I think there would be an expectation if you improve it as in total, including the coordinator position. But a lot of those details are going to need to be fleshed out as we move forward with actually implementing the plan. But this is a community-created document with facilitators, and this represents the work of the community and stakeholders involved and their recommendations to council to move forward.
Councilman Bausch.
So was there a public town hall style meeting, or was this just the invited guests?
There were both, Mr. Bausch. There was a series of workshops that were specifically advertised, posted, where the people from the community were invited. And then there was those private, closed workshops where only those that were part of the working group were invited.
Thank you. On page 23, it says the initial fiscal impact of implementing the Paso Robles strategic plan to address homelessness is $200,000. So when does that take effect? Does that take effect year one or down the road? When does that happen?
So we're right now, we're preparing to move into budget season. We don't have that money budgeted currently. Part of the process for building out the budget for council approval is to go through another series of public workshops as well. So staff right now is currently reviewing all of their department budgets, carryovers, and building a wish list, so to speak, for subsequent budget cycles. After that, we'll be meeting with council members to relay those to you and brief you on why those are important. And then the next phase of that would be to have a series of public workshops where the community gets to come and also tell council what's important to them and why. And then those goals get updated as we do every budget cycle, and that's the framework from which staff will begin to implement council's goals and priorities. Anything with any kind of substantial funding over my signing authority, which a body or adding staff, those kind of things require explicit council approval to be able to execute. So even if we got 4 months into this project and for whatever reason storm clouds are on the horizon with the economy and council said we can't do this, we don't want to do this, that's your prerogative. But at this point, this is the recommendation coming from the community, coming from the task force members that participated in it, and to move forward.
I just want to be clear. So are we bound by this 200,000 or is that to be determined in the future? If we pass this as
you are under no city obligation to do it. You may be under an obligation in views of the community that help participate in this to execute the strategic plan.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes, by giving your approval of the plan tonight, we still have to return to you with a complete job description and recommended wages, and you can adjust
line item budget.
Yes.
For this. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Strong. Yes, one more quick question. A lot of this is mental health oriented. Since those services are normally provided by the county, is there any consideration for county participation in the cost of the program?
The county is going to be one of our major partners. What we're looking for is a homeless services manager that can work closely with the county to make sure that we're in alignment and we can take advantage of opportunities as they become present. For example, mobile crisis units is one of the items that we want to explore in the plan. When the county has funding for one of those units, knowing that Paso is interested in that would position us to be able to potentially then take advantage of that opportunity when it presents itself.
So then you're saying that part of that cost might be borne by the county for that aspect of the program?
Potentially.
Thank you.
My question too, Angelica, heretofore, this council directed to support ECHO. How would ECHO still be involved with this coordinator or how our plan would interface with ECHO?
ECHO actually participated on the committee and provided a letter of support for the plan. We would continue to work with ECHO. Currently, we have promised 2 years of funding to ECHO. We have 1 year left of funding. At this point, I have no indication of what their plans are going to be after that year is up. I imagine that they always have the option of coming back to council for you to consider.
Yeah.
ECHO is one part of the, I think, way that we mitigate homelessness. It's just not the only way.
Well, true, but as far as this city, it was a big step for us a year and a half ago or so to fund them, you know, in a 2-year cycle, roughly $500,000. And that was our support to try to fix the homeless situation in our town. Pretty much all that we did other than through the CAT team and other things, you know, enforcement. But this is actually a next step, basically.
Absolutely.
Going down the street that we're trying to help the homeless. I'm concerned that whatever monies that the taxpayers are going to spend on this it's going to work. Something's going to be beneficial for those dollars. That's really what I'm concerned about too. So that has to do with obviously the program and how we run it. But that's to be seen still.
Right, and I think what we tried to do is present to you a holistic approach that looks at not only mitigating homelessness, but hopefully preventing homelessness in the future and providing support for supportive services, not only for those experiencing homelessness, but those that could potentially in the future.
Okay, very good. Any more then from council? Okay, we'll go ahead and open up then the public. Anyone wishing to address this item, please come forward. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name's Aurora William, and I participated on the strategic planning. So I want to thank Bill and Mike for the work that they did. I think they did an excellent job. I want to thank Angelica for the work that she did because she really put a lot of effort into this. Councilman Strong, I'd like to address what you said. You commented that there are not people who are working and are ending up homeless, and we have people who work who without mental illness, without substance use issues in the riverbed. When Echo was purchased for the homeless shelter, there was a woman in her 70s who was working for Motel 6. She ended up homeless in the train station, and she lived in a borrowed vehicle for almost 2 years. We helped get her housed. So there is an element, there's a population who cannot afford to live in this community who are hard to grant skills. This person is going to pay for themselves over and over and over again. You want somebody who's going to come in and get you the grant money. I hear the concern. We're all worried about it. I worry about money. One of the things that we're doing, and I gave a card, I was expecting to be called up earlier this evening, but we are opening a warming center this Thursday. It's being housed by some churches in town, and we've got a team of volunteers, same people who participated in the warming last year. It was an emergency pop-up center, and these are people who are coming. We had 159 unique individuals who showed up for the warming centers last year. These are people who aren't going to Echo for different reasons. Echo's doing a good job. They're serving a different population than the people in the riverbed who were having a hard time getting out and housed. So what Mr. Willen has done with this strategic plan is really to fill in the gaps and help identify tiers of help for people. I think they did an excellent job. I would really, really advocate for you to support the spirit in which it was worked on and written.
Very good.
I don't do this much. My name is Kimberly Booth. I own 2 local businesses. I am a mental health and homeless advocate in the riverbeds. I've helped people get housed, get mental health help. We started the warming shelter last year. But most importantly, I'm the mother of Ashlyn Miles. You referred to her earlier. I don't know where he went. She was a 21-year-old schizophrenic that the news report said was hospitalized over 50 times in 4 years. It was 74 times. In our county, she's not in the riverbed, as he reported. There was not another report done. She was taken by a sex offender September 4th of last year off the 46. After being discharged early from the PUF, me and Ann Robbins had plenty of conversations about that. She refused to help. She was taken in the back of a big rig to Arizona, where she still resides. She spent 3.5 months in the hospital intensive care, and then was transferred to an acute psychiatric hospital. And July 11th, she was conserved by the state of Arizona. She is now 12.5 hours away from me. She had every service in this county. Her problem was not homelessness, it was mental illness. So I am a homeless advocate. I do see the problems, but we also really need to focus on the mental health aspect of it. I see a lot of that down there, and if they don't go down there with it, they're coming back up with it. This is a family disease. My family's suffering. Our community is suffering, and I guess that's all I wanted to say. I'm also for a homeless service manager.
Very good. Thank you for your services.
Michael, welcome.
Michael Rivera. P.O. Box 3134. First of all, I want to thank the people who served on that committee. It's long, it's hard to do because there's so much emotion associated with that. And all of us in this room, I think every one of us has great compassion for people who are homeless. But a homeless coordinator, that means we're institutionalizing the industry of the homeless. I see it happening. Benchmarking reductions and demanding results is really what we need to be focused on. Drug use and alcohol use, mental illness, and just plain bad guys are why we're dealing with this subject. When the late mayor began in earnest to address this problem, he told the community it would not cost us, as we would work with nonprofits to help solve the problem. Where is the churches in this? Have we reached out to the churches, developed a coalition of churches and faith-based groups to address this? Have we brought God into this? Have we asked for a day of prayer to help these people, these poor people, many of whom are being abused, as was explained right here? I heard that there is no baseline of data. For God's sake, we've been working with ECHO for how many years? We have a police system that would go out and address these homeless encampments. We don't have a baseline? I don't know. It seems a little odd to me. How are we dealing with the homelessness being imported from other areas? I know for a fact they're coming from Fresno, from Bakersfield, because I talk to them. I talk to a lot of people. I'm out there. I'm engaged with a lot of people. I talk to them. They tell me, oh, we were told to come to Paso Robles. They have services. I just say, well, you got services. When you're dealing with dysfunction, whether it's in your family or whether it's in your community, we all know it's a challenging, difficult thing. Sometimes it requires tough love, depending on the circumstance. If this were your money coming out of your pocket, I'm looking at each and every one of you. Based on the information you have now, would you fund this? I know people who could fund this easily. Not me, but I know people that could do that. Would you?
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Council. I'm Scott Collins, Executive Director for the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo. And it's with great gratitude I extend to the City Council, to the city staff led by City Manager Ty Lewis and the Chamber for getting this ball rolling a year ago. And really appreciate that we were brought into this process of developing a strategic plan to address homelessness here in Paso Robles. This is a very thoughtful document addressing a very complex issue. We hear about mental health. We hear about substance abuse, which is real. We also should understand that the fastest growing demographic of homeless in our state are seniors. They're not drug addicts, they're not mental health patients. They are people who've worked their whole lives and Social Security is not cutting the bill, okay? So as Councilmember Strong was identifying, this is a broader issue than just those issues, though those are real. So I appreciate how thoughtful and complex and wide-ranging this plan is, because it takes into consideration all those issues. It also aligns well with the SLO County's plan to address homelessness as well, the 5-year plan. We applaud your leadership on this issue, as you demonstrated by supporting the Paso Home Key project, which we're part of with ECHO. We provide the permanent housing, they provide the front-end 90-day shelter program, which is getting results, okay? Getting people off the street permanently. So I encourage the City Council to formally adopt this plan moving forward. I understand the budget concerns, but when we look at those areas in our community and our county that are working, it's those who have assigned one person to run the program. The county created a homeless services division. which was controversial at the time, but it's made a tremendous impact. I have somebody I can go to directly. I don't have to go to the CAO or a council or a board supervisor to get something done. I can go directly to that manager. And the same goes for the city of SLO, created that standalone position. It is a choice and it's a tough one, I understand. But it's one that makes a big difference, I can assure you. So we as HASL will continue to support the efforts of the city to address this issue head on and develop additional housing opportunities with you here in the North County so that we can address this issue once and for all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Ann Robin. I am the former Behavioral Health Director for the county, and I'm here on behalf of Dr. Stargraver, the current Behavioral Health Director who couldn't make it tonight. I had the honor and privilege of serving on this strategic planning group, as well as the county's small group to form the county strategic plan that has been referenced by your consultants and brought through this plan. I really want to applaud the city for taking this brave step to develop your own city-based strategic plan to address the issues of our community members who are unsheltered, unhoused, who may be suffering from a variety of illnesses, not just mental illness and the illness of addiction, but physical health disorders, cognitive disorders, and other disabilities and challenges. As Councilman Strong mentioned, there are many members of your community who are one paycheck away from homelessness, and all the treatment in the world will not prevent that. This is a multi-tiered, multifaceted, and multi-year strategic plan that will encompass a number of those issues down the road. One of the things I'm very happy about with this plan, and I really do encourage you to adopt the recommendation to hire a specific individual to deal with all of the potential investments, grants, service delivery elements, and coordination that can really bring additional help to the city that are coming from the federal government, state government, the counties. I know that there are more programs that will soon be funded to deal with some of the individuals who have been the most reticent to accept services, people who have criminal justice backgrounds, felons, etc., who may also be part of the community that you're concerned about who've been living in the riverbed. So I really encourage you to think about having one person able to coordinate with the Homeless Services Committee that the county already has, to bring together the North County element of that committee to really focus on the needs, not just of the city of Paso, but Atascadero, Templeton, and the broader district in North County, because I'm a North County resident. We have different needs than what you might find in the city of SLO. And they've been less addressed over the years because there's a power source, there's money, and there is a lot of energy around the city of SLO. I think it's time that North County have the ability to step up to serve its own residents, its own communities in a focused way. And I think this plan really reflects the needs in a very well mapped out way to address these things. So I would just like to provide my support for the plan, as well as representing that the Behavioral Health Department of the county supports and will work closely with the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Ann. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Susie Freeman, and I serve as the Communications Program Manager for the County of San Luis Obispo's Homeless Services Division. I'm here today to express the county's support for the Paso Robles strategic plan to address homelessness. I had the honor to serve on the Unhoused Futures Studies Task Force and the working group that contributed to the plan under consideration this evening. I can personally attest that the plan elicited the ideas, proposals, and feedback from service providers, program administrators, and engaged community members. In addition, the plan is in alignment with the San Luis Obispo countywide plan to address homelessness. You've already heard this evening how this brings the intersection of housing, behavioral health, and substance abuse, as well as preventative programs, all under alignment with this plan.
With this roadmap in place, I'm excited to get to work. And I will say that we aren't waiting long. I already have on the books a meeting with Angelica in about 2 weeks, so we can start making sure that we are very strategic and thoughtful on moving forward with this plan. We've already been collaborating with your amazing staff, and we look forward to having an identified point person to further amplify our joint efforts. Also, I wanted to let community members know that if you're looking for a way to get involved right now, the SLO County Point in Time Count is happening on January 23rd. We're looking for volunteers to help us with this this community-wide census to identify the people affected by homelessness in this area. So if you're interested in learning more, please go to slocounty.gov/PIT count. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Susan. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, Jeff Carr, Paso Robles. Yes, it's a very comprehensive plan. I had a chance to read through it. I wish I had more time. It's a lot to digest. There's a lot of information in there. I got the impression that, the minute you approve it tonight, that they're going to go off and try to hire somebody right away. And that concerned me. I would have liked it better, maybe if we had an iteration to review it and look at it in more detail and then come with a budget. As I think some of you already mentioned, I think it should have included a full budget from start to finish, just to let us know what we're thinking here. That would help us even digest all the information. Then, once you have a budget, then I'm not against having a point person. That might be the way it has to happen, because, this city has developed lots of plans. Your website's littered with plans that were never worked on. So I think a point person is important to push that forward in the long run. But without a budget, I wouldn't even attempt to hire somebody. When his first task is go get a budget, that doesn't make sense. You have to have your budget approved and ready to go for this person. So again, I think it looks like a good plan. I'm looking forward to looking at it in more detail. Some other points that were made, it seems to lack certain coordination with other programs that have existed and even things we've tried here. And I get the impression that's all going to come out in the next steps. That looks good too. But ultimately, though, I think without a budget and an approved budget, it's not going to go anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, anyone else? No one else in line?
We do have callers online, sir.
I was going to check that. So, good.
First up is Patricia Wilmore.
Patricia, can you hear us?
Hi. Yes. Good evening, Mayor Hammond and members of the council. My name is Patricia Wilmore. I am the Government Affairs Coordinator at the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. I am also the Governing Board Chair at Twin Cities Community Hospital. So I look at this issue from several different perspectives, and I was very pleased and honored to serve on the task force. I would like to assure you of several things. One is, this was always a very lively discussion at our task force meetings, and what you see before you tonight is truly a collaborative effort of different views from community members who engaged very energetically in this issue. And we came at it from very different perspectives, and we came to some, I think, very valid conclusions, which you see before you tonight. This does affect our community across the board. And I truly believe that money invested in this is well worth the effort and will pay dividends to the community. But in that line, as several of your council members have pointed out, any specifics as to budget will come forward during the budget cycle. So I think we're fine there because you'll get to look at all this in detail as it comes down. I want to say several other things. One is that I highly compliment your city manager for convening this group, for meeting with us and encouraging us to move forward, for Angelica with her leadership. And I think your council can just be really pleased with the work of your staff on this. And I hope that you will approve this recommendation tonight and then look at the details as they come forward under various items on your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Anyone else? Melissa?
Next is Gina Fitzpatrick.
Gina, can you hear us?
Good evening. Yes. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I sincerely apologize that I'm not able to be there in person. I had conflicting appointments, and but felt this was absolutely important and needed to call in. So on behalf of the Chamber and the business community, I would absolutely like to thank you for investing the time and resources into this critically important matter. Our Chamber members have identified this topic as an absolute priority, hence our interest and our involvement throughout. We thoroughly enjoyed working with Mr. Whalen and Mr. Hamlin, as well as the participants that passionately participated in this process. I know you've heard quite a bit about the energy that was in the room on each of the meetings that we had and that we shared, and conversations were just fascinating. We learned a lot, and we poured our hearts and soul into this plan. Having a path forward and a clear understanding of where we are today and where we would like to be in the future is essential. And true to form, I'm excited to see Paso Robles have a unique, well-thought-out plan. Of course, the collaboration with the county and all of the other work that is being done is absolutely necessary. And I think that everything that you see throughout speaks to both specific Paso Robles as well as what everybody is trying to accomplish at the county level. So as a key stakeholder, we're in full support of the strategic plan that you have learned of this evening, and we would like to extend our services to assist in any way possible. Assuming the plan is endorsed this evening, which we sincerely encourage you to move forward with. I would also like to echo the sentiments of Deborah Albert. I don't know if she's in the room this evening, but she concluded our final committee meeting with a shout out to our city manager for thinking outside the box and allowing us to bring this plan to all of you. So thank you to Mr. Lewis, as well as to Angelica for all the time and energy and effort that she put forth as well. And I just want to thank you all for entertaining this. And again, we hope that you'll endorse it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Anyone else?
Next is Jan Albin.
Thank you. Jan, can you hear us?
I can, and can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Actually, one of the first issues I have is with the salary that's proposed for hiring a manager. I think it's extraordinary. And I would make the recommendation, and also my question would be, where are we searching for this manager? Are we going to be searching for someone who has this skill already? Is this part of their resume that they do this kind of thing, that they run this kind of department? I'd be curious about that. But my recommendation would be that we look for a lower salary with the incentive, because you know that there is absolutely nothing that's going to happen in the first year. It's going to be this person getting familiar with the circumstances, getting into the job, figuring out what has to happen. And on top of that, you're talking about a salary for one person. And they're going to need staff. There's no question about it. This is not a job that one person is going to be able to type up every single note and letter there is. They're going to have staff with that. So I really do worry that the cost of this program for this manager will be out of control before very long, as it's presented right now. And something just tells me that we've got the horse before the cart. We don't have the costs. We don't have a really good look at a proper budget for this program. And while it's a great plan and a strategic plan, I honestly looked at it and I don't have any problems with it, except that I don't think it's complete. And so I encourage you to take a step back and make it complete before you bring it back. Get all those answers, because the public has a right to know exactly what this is going to cost us. I'm glad that ECHO is going to not be, or is going to be a part of this, and that we'll be working in conjunction with them. But I see this as a really long-term plan that's going to go on for a couple of years before we see anything specific or positive happening from it. So I would like to take a step back, reevaluate the manager's position and salary, and just go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Anyone else online?
Next is Ron Cuff.
Mr. Cuff, can you hear us?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm calling from a bunker beneath the brick and steel of an undisclosed location in Paso Robles. Thanks for taking my call. I'm going to endorse this with conditions. I too served on both committees. I was honored to be one of only 2 or 3 pure citizen volunteer members on the committees. And hopefully I'm going to give you some nuance to this. I'll be as brief as possible. I'm a strong advocate for the city appointing a single employee who is responsible for the results. And I implore the council, however, to delay this decision until we find where the devil is in the details. And here are the 3 problems that I see. There's no specificity as to what tangible results are expected or when they can be expected. To it, all of us can agree that we are desperately trying to reduce the number of people that are homeless in Paso Robles. The new homeless czar, so to speak, should report on status, the count, and progress to the city council at least monthly, maybe every meeting. In other words, have a solid job description before we move forward on this. There's no plan to reduce future homelessness by attacking the root cause of not all homelessness, but most, and that is the mental illness, the psychosis, and schizophrenia frequently triggered by early adolescent drug use. And lastly, words matter. I don't think a homeless services director is what we need. We don't want to serve homelessness. We want to minimize it, eliminate it as much as possible. Perhaps we need a homelessness reduction director. I don't really like that either, but you see what I'm saying. So basically my message is, please wait. It's similar to Jan Alvin's message, take a step back. Send this back for fleshing out more details. And I can't criticize the program because I was on both committees, and I strongly support having a single point of contact and a person accountable for all things homeless. But we need benchmarks, specific benchmarks, timeliness, positive results, and most importantly, insist on primary prevention in our middle schools as an important mid to long-term strategy for reducing and eventually eliminating homelessness. We can do it if we think about the way things were in 1996. There were very few homeless people. So I think we can get back there if we focus on it. Bottom line is simply spending more money without real accountability won't solve the problem, but a more specific plan of action will. So I encourage you to send it back for a little bit more work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
No other callers.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring it back then to council for discussion and or action direction. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I would like to.
Councilman Strong?
I don't care. I'm probably going to take a little bit of time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take a while. So can I go ahead?
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, I don't see this as an ultimate plan. That's why we need the coordinator. I see this as an expression of the community's desired results. This is what the community ultimately wants to achieve. And that's what the whole organization was. It was a community effort to come up with some ideas. And in that aspect, it's a good plan. It expresses the wishes of the community. You need that coordinator probably for a year to do nothing more than put together the action plan to go with this, to show what we have to do and how we have to go about it and what it's going to cost and where we're going to get the funding. Some of that funding can come from the federal government. Some of it can come from the state government. We're already getting funding along certain of these lines from the federal government and the state through, for instance, some of the food programs that we've got going that are helping people who are low income or fixed income. We have a number of other things. We have the Section 8 program, which is trying to solve some of the homeless problem, but it's very underfunded, which is why we have 5-year waiting periods now for one of those permits. And that's another area where the federal and state governments can come in, especially the federal government in that case. And there are advocates for those things. But your point person on that has got to be somebody who knows what they're doing, who has some idea of how to go about getting the grants, where they're available, who to go and talk to about it, and why we need them and what we need them for. And that's the person who's going to develop your action plan. And I don't think we're going to have a huge staff within a year. It's going to take that person about a year in order to come up with that thing, to come back to us, and then give us the budget so that we can go out and find out what we can spend, where the money's coming from, and what we can achieve and have some benchmarks. That's what I see. I'm looking at the next item, and I'm seeing comments from 2 people that made public comment written on the next item that are affecting the housing costs drastically in this community. And it takes me back to one of the homeless people who recently we found dead. And it was a gentleman who unfortunately had talked to me before he got evicted. In his mid-80s, the last surviving member of his family, and very ill on fixed income, paying $800 a month, which he was barely able to eke out. His little tiny duplex sold, and the new owner raised his rent almost 300% in 1 month, up to $2,200 a month. Within 3 months, he was homeless. There was no way he could come up with that money or had any resources behind him to do so. And with his illness and no safe place to be, he was dead within 90 days. This has got to stop. And that's why we need something along this line. Thank you.
Councilman Gregory.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that participated in this effort. Lots of great compliments. Mr. Cuff, thank you sorry you couldn't be here today. But everybody participated really well in the process to come to a common goal. And how we get there is kind of what we're going to have to figure out how to do that. The important thing to remember on this group is we had Haslow, who has a huge number of housing units for affordable housing. We have David Cook that's on this. We have the behavioral health director from the county. There was so much good information coming out, and Ron Cuff himself was producing a great amount of information for this process. So to go forward and move forward, we have to come up with a plan, which we came up with, and we're started with a budget that's a little shaky right now, but I just want to talk about that a little bit. So what we need is a Ditas Esperanza that knows health of homeless people who can get in there and help us find grants. And the idea in my conversation with staff while we were talking about the budget for the staff person was, I want somebody that's going to work, but more importantly, and I think Ty Lewis brought it up, that after a short period of time, a year or so, that person is going to be able to generate enough money from grants and services from the county and the state and the feds to help pay that person's salary. That's the goal. And I think it's really important, several people have said it tonight, is state what the goals are, what the purposes are, what the job is for this coordinator so that people who are not in the homeless environment like some of us are, they can see and understand what that person's going to do. I sit on the HSOT committee. There's 38 members. It's all homelessness. It's a very difficult thing to engineer through and guide yourself through all the time. So there's a lot of responsibility with this job. And Angelica can't do it anymore by herself. She needs somebody to help her so she can get back to what she's doing, but she can certainly help direct that person. I think it's really important as a community is we take that number of $200,000 and you don't assign it to a salary. You assign it for $200,000 for help setting up a person, their committee, their job, their department, whatever it is, and you move forward. But before, I don't know, and maybe Elizabeth, you can chime in on this, but if there's a way to modify the language saying that we'd like a full review of it as a council to understand how the money is going to be spent, what the salary is going to be, and what they're going to be trying to accomplish. I think that's not an unreasonable request at all. Most importantly is that we want to keep moving forward. There's something that this brings to the table that a lot of us don't know about, and Ty knows about it, and I've heard about it. The state of California is going to be funding money through the group at the Board of Supervisors. And the only two cities in the county that have a plan are San Luis Obispo City and Paso Robles will have this plan. So it's important to get it in place because it allows us to get a majority of the funding for homelessness and homeless strategy from the state of California. That's how you pay for things like Motel 6 and the other things that we've been able to get as a $15 million gift to our community. And that's where we need to be working towards right away is getting somebody to coordinate all the information and go out and seek the funding. The funding is critical and you need somebody very skilled at what they do. Without that, it's going to be very difficult to move forward. And maybe Fred might have said it, that it's going to take a little bit of time, but we need to have an approvable budget and salary so we can move forward with their goals and what they want to achieve. The most important thing is I don't want to step back at all because we're a step ahead of everybody in the county except for San Luis Obispo right now. Having this plan in place is critical for us. We had the state of California here for a celebration at Motel 6, and they said this was the most collaborative community effort they'd ever seen in helping the homeless in a community like Paso Robles. So many agencies, so many people. I don't know how many volunteers the ECHO has and the organizations around them, but we did it and we're doing it well. And just a couple statistics for the public: 85% of the people that they're housing are from Paso Robles zip codes. 50% of their people are coming out of the river, are getting housed, that are going to the program. Those numbers are arguably the best statistical numbers for housing homeless in the state of California because their program is so successful. So as a city, I think it's really important on our part to support them, around them, with other homeless agencies and support and grants, and like the Ranger program. That would take the heat off the police department eventually, but it doesn't have to happen now. It can be in the plan. But a Ranger program, they go into the river and help the police department, and others help the homeless come out of the river and get into homelessness, and get into ECHO or other programs. So my recommendation would be to somehow approve the plan tonight. You can identify the money as general funds or a fund going into this strategic plan to be decided with a presentation back to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Councilman Belsch.
Couple things. Until it's a great plan. I served on the first unhoused future study. I couldn't serve on this one because the ad hoc committee already had two council members and that were violated the Brown Act. But this plan is amazing. So thank you very much for all the work that went into it. Couple observations. Until the state legislature and the governor reverses their policy on how well-meaning service agencies, police department, et cetera, can treat are homeless or unhoused or addicted, we can't compel anybody to seek treatment. We just can't. It's illegal. We can ask them to volunteer and give them lots of good reasons to go into treatment. So we have to figure out how best to make that happen. We can offer the best program in the world, but until they're ready and at that certain point, they're not going to go into it. Having been on the school board for 10 years, I think it's not wise to rely on grants for any kind of salaries. Grants are meant for brick and mortar. They're meant for infrastructure. They're not to be relied on for salaries, ever, ever, ever. The moment you do, that grant source dries up, and then that salary comes out of your general fund. Better to rely on that, on your general fund upfront. Put it in the budget, and if you can't afford it, stay away from it. We need a budget. We absolutely have to have a budget. I'm behind this plan, but I want to see the numbers before I can vote for it. If I can't see the numbers, I can't vote for it. It would be fiscally irresponsible. I don't care how compelling the need is and the timeline is. We were elected or appointed to be fiscally responsible. We need to define what success looks like. We don't know what the benchmarks are. We can have a budget and still not know what success looks like. I said it earlier tonight. We hire someone to tell us what success looks like. If I went to one of my business clients and said, I'm going to find a really good person for you, and she's going to tell you what success looks like, they'd laugh at me. I don't think we can do that. This document helps define that, but I think we need some more work on that. I think the committee that's constituted now has done an amazing job, and if you can compel them to come back and work some more on this, I think Mr. Cuff was right on. I think Mr. Carr had some good ideas too, but I think we need some more work on this and bring it back. That would be my direction tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Sharon, you have anything?
I know there's a tremendous amount of work by the community and by Angelica and a lot of people in Thai who have put this together. I do wish that they would have taken the extra step in providing at least a breakdown of the 200,000. And if you have that and can present it tonight, that could make a difference for me.
If I could respond to 2 items, would that be okay? The first is about the baseline. I just want to provide some clarification there. The point in time count is a count that takes place every 2 years. It's where every community goes out and literally counts the number of individuals in their community that are experiencing homelessness. This year, for the first time, the city is actually a member of that committee, and the county is putting in extra effort and funding to try and create a better, more accurate count. The count takes place at 5 a.m. in the morning, and it's widely believed that it's not an accurate count. In addition to that, as a result of the timing of the count, we can't, or we haven't had a significant amount of survey responses. So when we look at the county's point in time count, we look at, well, how many veterans are experiencing homelessness? And we get a county number. We don't get a PASO number. So one of the reasons we don't have a baseline is because we don't have enough data, and we need that, which is part of the plan. And if you look at policies and procedures, we have a particular goal there in joining the county and their a new HMIS system, which is essentially a data system. So it's very difficult to establish a count when we know already that the data that we have is not necessarily accurate. So that's built into the plan. There are other baselines that are built into the plan. For example, housing. We know that we need affordable housing units, but we don't know how many transitional units are required. We don't know how many emergency units are required. And That's why we need a homeless services manager to work with our housing partners in order to establish what those baselines are. The bulk of the plan is really partnership and collaboration and time. If you look on page 23, we tried to outline the items that we would need to come back to council for, or that would require additional examination for us to be able to make a really valid recommendation for budget. Will we have that now? Likely not for most of these items. So for example, here we have develop opportunities for after-school teen engagement to foster positive community participation amongst youth. Well, we have our teen center and we can choose to expand those services. But again, that's going to take time to evaluate the results of how that teen center is working, to evaluate where and if the community would like more services of that nature. I already discussed the Ranger program, which would again be a potentially a range for council to choose from. And I think part of what we're asking for, or part of the reason that we don't have such an itemized budget, is because items like that exist. And when we were looking to put together an itemized budget, what we realized is that most of this is time. It's this person actually going out and working with the service providers. Outreach is thought by many to be one of the best ways to get people to accept help. It takes multiple outreach touch points in order to actually get someone to say, you know what, I'm ready to get help. We have several organizations throughout our community that are providing outreach, and we don't have a strong relationship with any of them, so we're not sure when they're out there, who's out there, who they're talking to, if they've talked to the same person. And so you'll see in the plan, one of the items that we're looking at is developing a North County collaborative so that we can start to really establish those partnerships. So of course we can come back, but what you'll see is that most of the plan is just that, it's time.
Anything else on that, Sharon?
And the salary that's fully loaded, 175? That'd be great.
Good evening, City Council. Ryan Cornell, Administrative Services Director. The plan is kept vague for that, for kind of a broad reason. Obviously, when we actually go out and develop this job description, we will look at comparators. We'll both look at comparators within the jurisdictions, our neighboring agencies, as well as kind of related job responsibilities amongst other positions within the city. So we don't have a fine-tuned, this is what the salary is going to be, but more of an idea of which should be in this kind of range.
And what range was that? I'm sorry.
It should be fully loaded. Should be in the neighborhood of $150,000 to $175,000 per year.
You might want to explain for the council and for the community what fully loaded means.
Fully loaded means all applicable employer taxes, employee benefits, including medical, dental, health, and retirement. And the retirement piece of it is probably the most significant out of all of the employee costs.
Okay, let me chime in here for a minute. Again, I first off really want to thank all the community members, everybody who put the time into this. It's amazing, that you did so much work, so many hours to come up with a plan that, again, it's a community support plan, all right? And that's the way I see this, is that it's a community plan, not an expenditure plan. It's just a thought that the community wants to move forward in a direction. Staff is going to be coming back at a later time with a more specific plan for cost and individuals and how they want to run it. But in general, I think what's before us tonight is to endorse or not endorse this strategic plan for homelessness that the community has come up with. And that's why I'm basically, for it. But there's many questions, of course, on how it's going to be implemented and what's the cost going to be. And that's where we come in at a later date to approve it or not approve it. But in concept, this is a starting point. I mean, this is, like I said earlier, our main effort here has been through ECHO. And it was a big step that we supported them a year and a half ago with some funding. And I've told all the Roblins, again, your tax dollars are helping the homeless in a way through ECHO. And of course, there's a little bit of staffing, but now it's going to be the next step. If we're going to really do a job here, that if we really want to help these people, my mantra has always been, we want to hand up, not a handout. If we want to continue that, then it's going to take staff, somebody that is going to coordinate. I truly believe, too, that this individual will pay for himself. And again, it's going to be an all-encompassing department of one that is coordinating a lot of things. Not sure where we're going to find this super person, but and again, there's people obviously in the industry of homelessness that have a lot of expertise. And if we can attract somebody that's very good and we can bring them on staff, and get us in a direction where the monies that we spent are not wasted. Again, that's the whole point here, is that, we want to help these people, but on the other hand, we're not just making government bigger to make government bigger. There is a specific goal for the department. Benchmarks will be made, grant acquisition, agency coordination. There's so much that individual is going to have to do, and he's going to have to do it well, obviously, to find the right person. So, again, before us tonight, the way I see it, it's not an expenditure vote. It's an endorsement vote. Do we want to move forward with this plan or not? And then at a later date, the budget cycle starts this next year. I basically think and understand that if we approve that budget, this would probably happen next summer. Wouldn't it be, Angelica, or what do you think this would all turn?
Correct.
Yeah. So this is just, again, we're taking the public input and what they had asked the council to review and accept, and then move forward next step. Again, to me, I think it's logical that we at least endorse it at this point. Councilman Strong.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm pretty certain that what you said is all 100% true. We're approving a concept tonight, not an expenditure plan. We're not going out to hire anybody tomorrow because staff has to come back to us with a job description and a salary range and a recruitment plan. And all that comes back to us for approval before they go out and do anything. So we're not spending money tonight. No. We are saying, do we want to solve the homeless problem or try to solve it or not? If we not, then fine. Then watch your river go to hell. Watch everything else go to hell. That's your choice. Do we just let it go and let it happen? Or do we make an effort and start to move forward and have staff bring back to us the specifics that then we vote on individually as they come back to us, including budget?
The question I have for Angelica, and my thought here is, when do you think we'll be hearing from you folks again on this particular topic with regard to the plan, the individual costs, and all these kind of things?
Let me jump in a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, we're moving into budget season. Yeah. So by early spring, we're going to be presenting, hosting workshops with the council. And as part of that, my intention is to be able to have as much legwork to bring a comprehensive budget back before council to approve. And I can even take it one step further if it sways the council, to again endorse the plan, would be to include the ad hoc members as we move forward with building this out, so that there's a couple representatives of council that were familiar with the plan and creating it to be able to provide some backseat guidance on this. So when we come back to council and the full council at the dais, you'll be able to provide additional context as to how we arrived there, aside from HR and what Ryan's team does, with salary surveys. And again, I think Mr. Bausch made an excellent point that we're looking for a unicorn. So where are we going to find this person? Probably in the unicorn fields. But seriously, there's a lot of good people in the community. I can tell you right now, without going into specifics, I've at least received one phone call from somebody within the group that said, "Hey, if you're looking for someone, I might be interested." So I think that there are professionals in the area that would be highly enticed to come to work for the city of Paso Robles. And again, this is a leadership position that's going to require a lot of autonomy and a lot of experience in a very specific field. And so even though the price tag is high for that, I'm not saying exactly where we're going to land on that, because we do have more legwork to do on this particular matter. But I think the consensus that I've heard tonight is that the ideas and the concepts are sound, but you're worried about the financial fiscal aspect of this. And I think we can assuage a lot of that by including the ad hoc members in the production of this research and documentation, and then bring it back to the full council for approval with line items if necessary, to be able to demonstrate what we're trying to accomplish in the first 2-year budget cycle.
Well, I'll just add to that too. I know this is an election year coming up, and all of a sudden California has pretty much said, okay, maybe we own part of this, and we're going to pony up some money here. And again, it's all of our tax dollars. Anybody who lives in California is paying for that. And if we don't ask for it properly, we were going to get left behind. Again, just like anything else, shovel ready. And if we have a program like Councilman Gregory mentioned that, San Luis and Paso are the only ones that have something really on plan. Those are the folks that are going to be looked at first, for funding. And this individual will be an advocate to bring that dollars back to our San Luis County. So to me, I think at this point, it's the first step in a long plan. This is definitely not over, but I think, again, anyone would like to make a motion where we're going here at this point? Any more further discussion?
So, go ahead.
That there is a fiscal component to this. I mean, they wouldn't have included the fiscal impact if they weren't looking for dollars.
No,
so the first step is the $200,000. And then, let me finish. Thank you. Then the following objectives may require additional fiscal review based on the desired scope at the time of implementation. Then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more items. Those look like individual positions to me. So it looks like a pretty healthy department. So there will be additional dollars requested and spent if we're going to make this. So I hope the grant funding that the county provides is robust.
True. I agree. Totally agree. Again, but as of right now, from what I'm hearing from staff's report, they're not asking for any money until next budget cycle. They want to propose it. They want us to agree on it, get a plan for it. But are you asking some money in between here and next June?
We are not. What we wanted to make clear to council is that for this plan to be successful, we don't have the capacity currently. We need to build that capacity, and that's the homeless services manager. We are, there is no plan to begin hiring until after the budget process is complete. And if city council approves that budget along with the position, at that point, we would go into recruitment. And then the items there certainly are a few that would require staffing, specifically the ranger program, but the other items do not necessarily envision additional staff. I think really what we're looking at is, for example, the economic development manager that we have for the city. He's a one-man show, but does a lot of work. He's a unicorn.
Paul's overworked.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Gregory.
So before I make a motion, Ty, so if I'm going to make a recommendation that we approve the plan with the understanding that the funding for the staff will be completely reviewed and approved by the city council.
Councilmember Gregory, it's Elizabeth here. I think you can add to your motion a requirement that staff return to the city council with a completed budget or fleshed out budget and job description as part of the upcoming budget proceedings. Okay. And then if you also wanted, I think City Manager Lewis had recommended including some or all of the committee members in the next step. And
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Sorry about the call.
So if we have the motion and that's the way it's kind of crafted. Second. All right, Councilman Strong, then you're going to
Did you get all that, Madam Clerk?
I got the majority of it, and I'll have the audio as well.
Very good. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Call for the question then, Melissa.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Bausch?
No.
Councilmember Roden?
Yes.
Mayor Hammond?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right. Thank you all that served on that ad hoc and the committee. Very well done. A lot of work. Appreciate it. Then we'll do a 5-minute break. Councilman Gregory, okay. Be back here at like maybe 15 till. Sounds good. We'll call the meeting back to order. Item 2 on our discussion items is the reduction of short-term rental waiting list. And Ty, you'll have the, I guess, the item, but I think, should we have Elizabeth go ahead and explain how we have to proceed on something like this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would appreciate that.
Elizabeth, can you hear us? Can you explain how we need to proceed with the item at this point?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 3 of our council members have a financial interest that results in a conflict of interest as it relates to short-term rental units. As a result, they would not be able to participate. We need a minimum of 3 people to have a quorum and to be able to take action on an item. As such, we will be, as we've done on other issues, drawing names out of a hat to re-qualify, excuse me, one of the council members. So we'll be able to proceed with the item. I believe our 3 council members are Mayor Hammond, Mr. Gregory, and Ms. Roden all own short-term rental units, which creates the conflict of interest. Melissa, can you go through the process of putting the names in the hat and drawing one out for requalification?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
So to show the room, I have all 3 names. I brought my own, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and fold these in half and put them in the hat. And then I'm going to ask our Community Development Director, Warren Frace, to go ahead and mix them up. And then let me choose one. And the name that was pulled was Hammond.
Okay, so Hammond is staying on board then to basically continue.
So Mr. Hammond will continue to participate, and the other 2 will be recused from the item.
And for the record, I will say that I do not own one. I have an indirect interest in one, I guess, is the way it's been told to me, that I'm an executor for my mom's estate who owns one. So that is my relationship to this whole issue.
We're going to be coming back.
Yeah, we'll call you back when we're finished here. Be assured. Don't go home.
Ms. Hull, we had a question by Councilmember Gregory on whether he's allowed to give public comment.
Yes, because he has a real property interest, there is an exception that allows him to speak to his personal real property interest that may be impacted.
Same way with Roden. Can they stay in the room then, Elizabeth, to listen to the item?
They can, yes.
Okay. If you guys wish to stay in the room.
Excuse me.
The night's not over.
All right. Ty, will you have this item, or who's going to?
Yes, I'll be introducing it. Mr. Frace is here to support me if there's some other items that in the discussion part of it. So as you might recall, that this was a request by Mr. Gregory a few weeks ago to bring back a discussion for council consideration regarding the long wait list that's related to the short-term rental issue here. So as you can see in front of you, we have a map as well as a table that describes how all the different various STR permits are distributed throughout the city. So when we look at the short-term rental issue, you have a couple different types of short-term rentals. You have home shares, which means that you have usually the owner on site that stays or is around to help manage it, but is usually on site. Then you have a non-hosted permit, which is the traditional STR that I think most people are familiar with, where the owner isn't present on the premises. And so between those, you can see in the R1 zone, we have 155 of those. The T zone also has permits issued there, fewer home shares there, and more non-hosted permits for a total of 198. And we'll note that the T-zone is mostly what you're going to see on the west side of Paso Robles, west of 101, which is also referred to often in the Opportunity Zone, and it runs north and south on the west side of town. And then, of course, you have all other zones, which would encompass any kind of R2 zones or other areas that may have mixed use. And we have 65 there for a total of 418. So you'll notice that we are a little bit over the cap that council had established at the time of this, but most of those are home share permits, which aren't subject to the cap per the municipal code. And currently on the wait list, we have 88 total people or homes waiting to receive a non-hosted permit. All right. So you can see here's a graphic display of when the program started and the amount of applications to date as of 11/1. You have an R1 wait list, which again, we're waiting for that number to fall below the cap established within by council in 2019, and which is different than, of course, the wait list for the citywide non-R1 zones. Okay, and then of course, one of the things that always comes up as a discussion point for council is how much revenue does the city receive when we're looking at short-term revenue, or excuse me, short-term rentals. Transient occupancy tax is the way we measure that. It's a specific tax that hotels, RV parks, and short-term rentals all pay, and you can see the numbers there. Dating back to 2016 and 17, all the way up to 22, 23, where we dipped a little bit from last year, but we're still pushing $1.2 million in total revenue for short-term rentals. So tonight, we're presenting council with a few waitlist relief options that staff identified. Of course, council might have some other ideas that they'd like to discuss. The three main options that staff was able to identify is one that is to eliminate any type of permit transfers within the T-zone. So currently the municipal code allows for transfers only in the T-zones. So to date, 15 permits have been transferred. And the way that usually occurs is when somebody sells their home, oftentimes they'll transfer the permit. It's an investment opportunity. Speculators often want to, purchase these small mini businesses, so to speak, within the T-zone. But as you can see, a lot of those haven't been transferred or have been, a small amount, 15 have been transferred. So theoretically, since the inception of our municipal code, those would have been 15 permits. If they were not transferable, that would have helped clear out the, or at least a portion of the wait list. It is noteworthy to know that within the T-zone where they are transferable, anecdotally speaking, that they do significantly raise the value of the real estate within that zone. Some estimates are between $100,000 and $200,000 above, the appraised value of a short-term rental within that particular zone. Your second option would be to limit permit renewals for inactive permits. Currently, we have about 110 permits within the city that have been issued that aren't remitting any type of TOT each year. So that would be another option if the council were to consider an option to limit the renewal of those people that are not remitting any type of TOT. Then those would be theoretically another 110 permits that would be freed up to relieve the list. That would require an ordinance change because currently the municipal code does allow for those, both the transfers within the T-zones, and then we want to make sure that we're in compliance with our codes relative to renewals. And then the last and probably most obvious option is to flat out increase the number of short-term rental permits within the city. So if there are currently, pushing 90 permits that need to be issued, council could look at that and make any kind of adjustments they see fit to increase the permits within the city. And so staff's recommendation at this time is for council to provide us with direction on on one of those three choices. And then we can bring back an item for your further consideration that spells out the details regarding the changes to the municipal code if necessary, and or any type of resolutions to amend any of the rules as it relates to short-term rentals. So with that, I will turn it over to council if you have any questions for staff.
Okay. First off, Brett, any questions?
Yeah, a couple of things. Could we include both of those items, number 1 and 2?
Yes, sir, Mr. Strong. Again, these are several of the options, and with councils, with three of you here to discuss it, we would need consensus on which of those that you would like to implement.
Okay, the next question is, the T-zone, is that just commercial? Or what is included in the T-zone?
So Mr. Fraze can probably expound upon this better than I can, but within the T-zone, you have a mix of residential and commercial.
Wasn't that the Uptown?
So the T-zone was created with the Uptown specific plan. Yeah. So pretty much all the historic grid is the Uptown specific plan. So the T actually stands for transect because it was a form-based code. It was based on this transect theory. So all the zones start with T. So there's a TC1, town center, that would be like the downtown around the city park. And then you have T3, which is basically kind of a R2 type zone. And then between that, there's variations of different types of densities and commercial mixed use allowed. There's about 4 different T zones.
Could we possibly have a better explanation and showing which one of those T zones some of these are in? Or limited to only certain portion of the T zones?
All of those things are possible.
All of those are possible. Thank you.
Councilman Belch, questions?
How is it that we came to having the T zone transferable with the R1 not being transferable?
Mr. Frace, you might be able to expand.
So the short-term rental was a product that came out of the short-term rental task force. It was a committee group comprised of public stakeholders. They made recommendations to the Planning Commission and City Council. I believe the original version that they forwarded to Commission and Council didn't include any transfers. I think as part of the deliberative process at Commission and Council, it was decided that there should be some limited transfers, and that was decided to be within the T-zone.
Okay. So was that the council's recommendation, or did that come out of the committee's? Who were you guys on?
No, that's actually my question too. If you want to finish your thought, but that's what I was going to ask Warren too. Where did this transfer only in the T zones come from?
Fred, were you around at that point?
Yeah, but I don't remember.
Okay.
It was a complicated discussion, very lengthy.
It was long and lengthy. Yeah.
I think they're denying responsibility, Warren. I'm just guessing, but okay. So we could remove that transferability, and that would simplify things for the wait list. It seems like.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have any immediate impacts. You'd have to wait for sales of properties to occur. And as you can see, since 2019, we've had about 15.
Okay, I have an additional question.
Sure.
Okay, a couple. One is, and I'm referring to some of the public comments that were made in writing to us. And one was that, and up here it said something on one of the previous slides, about 100 are not paying any transient occupancy tax, which means they're not functioning.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that. I think that part of the challenge that staff has had since this is, and it was evidenced in our previous conversation as well, is our ability to, monitor these as close as we can could be enhanced for sure. But right now, we don't have a team that actively goes and knocks on doors to see when people are staying there. We'd have to perform some audits, which would require working with the Airbnb or VRBO or some of the other hosts to determine who maybe just purchased a permit, maybe in the R1 zone, just to prevent others from getting a permit within that neighborhood. I'm quite sure that there's some of that. I'm quite sure that there's some people that are not paying their TOT as they should be, but it would require a lot more extensive investigation on the part of the city to be able to determine, how many of those actually are active and just not remitting TOT.
So could we require a permit to expire after a certain number of months of no TOT?
That would be an option, and we'd have to work with the city attorney to be able to craft that language to be able to ensure that we're in compliance with the law as it relates to issued licenses and what that process would look like.
Okay. Could we also consider an in lieu fee, figure out what the average TOT revenue was across properties and offer that to a property owner?
As an annual fee?
No, it's every 2 years, isn't it? They have to apply for their license every 2 years, Todd?
Renewals are every 2 years.
Right.
I don't know if that has any cachet with the property owner, but rather than eliminating or forcing that to expire, give them that option.
Yeah, the way I interpreted what you just said is set a minimum floor for remittance. Everybody would be subject to that minimum floor that pulls a permit, which I'm guessing would probably be, I'd have to work with Elizabeth and the team on that, but the way I would envision that is just increasing the cost of the permits.
But that doesn't reduce the amount of available units so that our hotels can be used more.
But it achieves the tax, the revenue.
It achieves a tax if all we're thinking about is the money, if that's all we're thinking about.
No, that's not.
I'm trying to think about
I wasn't around to pass this goofy thing, so I don't know.
Okay. And I have another question too, and that is a Mr. Sanchez here tonight? No? Okay. He mentions that Airbnb shows over 500 properties available in Paso Robles alone. But we only have 300 and some total licenses, with 110 of them not even showing any tax.
Remember, a lot of times we get, there's confusion with zip code. So we have the 93446 zip code. A lot of people make the mistake of assuming they're all in Paso Robles when that's not actually the situation.
Okay, now that explains that then, fine.
Ty, my question is exactly how many, or roughly how many do we have on the waiting list who would like to have a short term?
88.
88 right now. Okay, the other question I had just lost me there. I was thinking of a different tangent, but no, it'll come to me.
And then what is the part-time issue where somebody can rent their home out part-time and not somebody tried to explain that to me and I got thoroughly lost.
Home share?
Is it the home share or is that?
There's usually a couple ways home shares work. One would be, say you have 2 dwellings on your home, an ADU perhaps. You could stay and live in your ADU and rent your front house out. And that would be a way of accomplishing a home share. Or maybe it's you just want to rent a bedroom within your home. That's another way to do it. Or the other option would be to just do it on occasion. So we're going out of town this weekend, and we want to put our home on the market as a timeshare. You could do it that way as well.
Do you need a license to do that?
You do.
Okay.
I just recalled, I thought back in the day when we did all this, that we did hire a firm to monitor. Are we still doing that, or
We do.
Yeah.
We have a company called Host Compliance that works with us to monitor illegal listings.
Right.
So they regularly report those listings that they identify as not having a license, and then our team will try and send out notifications and letters. As part of a follow-up action at some point in the future, we're going to have to bring back a list of, modifications that staff's recommending to tighten the reins, so to speak, with some of these, because there are some bad actors out there, and we're aware of that. But I would say, as the numbers bear out at almost $1.2 million per year, that we also have a lot of good folks that are doing a lot of good things with their short-term rentals and contributing to the city economy in a positive way.
The one thing that really bothers me is, people who play by the rules and do the right thing, and then there's those that don't. And those are the ones that take advantage of the city, and that's not cool. But okay.
Not just not the city, but their neighbors as well.
True. Yeah, I know. That's the whole point. All right. I don't have any further questions at this point. Anybody else?
I don't either.
Fred? Okay. So we'll go ahead and then open it up to public comment, if you would. Looks like Dale's there. Go ahead, Dale.
Dale Augustin, 630 13th Street. I've been involved in this ever since the start. And the initial ordinance was passed by this council, said no timeshares or vacation rentals, either one, in R1. And that was after Dan Jones brought in a long petition to do that. And so they passed that ordinance. But before a second reading, all the timeshare or vacation rental people got to the council. Said, you're going to lose all that TOT tax. Can't we just find a way to police them, because it's the noise and so forth that is causing all the people the problems? So they did set up some time ordinances and the number of people during different times in timeshares. And it helped to a certain extent. Except when they passed this ordinance, they decided, well, we're not going to make it unlimited. We'll make it 75. But you know what they did put in the ordinance? It didn't take effect for 30 days. What happened to that 30 days? Same thing happened in the county on permits for water. All these ran out and bought the permits, whether they were going to use them or not. That's why you got a bunch of people with permits and they're not using them. They were valuable. And a lot of them have planned to use them. And now we have the problem of, actually, it was Maria that said, how about 75 for a limit? Because there was talk of 200, and she said that's too many. Well, you haven't got anywhere near the 75 in R1. And I think the T1 zone didn't help. It made it worse. I think you need to, as was alluded to, eliminate the T1. Just make it citywide, limit the number in R1, and timeshare doesn't seem to be a problem, because most of the timeshares are people on the premises, most of them. Or, like you said, it's maybe 1 week. Well, they come back at the end of 1 week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Welcome. Sharon Wood.
Well, I take a little bit different view. I remember when the discussions were occurring with the committee that were making recommendations. I think the transferability came out of the fact that the committee had suggested doing away with STRs in R1 and R2 and keeping them in the downtown area. I don't know for sure if that's what it was, but that wasn't necessarily followed. But I'm not sure why we're not eliminating those. There's neighborhoods all over, even in the T-zone. That's where ours are. Although, even though it personally hurts me, I don't think it ought to be transferable. I think you create a a false sense of investment that shouldn't be applied to this. The business model is actually renting out the things, not to be able to hold on to a permit with minimal renting just to possibly have an upside. And my business partner brought up in some of the open discussion that a few weeks ago, we had a neighbor 3 doors down from our rental that had their place valued at $625 and they sold it for $825. Now that may or may not hurt the neighbors, but most of the time you're going to have investors out of the area, and that's where you lose contact with the neighborhoods. I know every one of the neighbors, they have my cell phone number, and they know they can call me night or day if there's an issue, and I respond. That isn't the case. Usually when you create a system like this, you almost have to create a czar to overlook it. We've turned in 2 properties that we knew that were not licensed to the city. And we're going to go through the whole list as well to make sure. But I would suggest that anyone who is not performing on their permit, that be taken away. I'd like to see them only occur in the T-zone, but that's just my own preference. And I think you'd have a lot of people in R1 and R2 that probably agree with that. I don't know that we need to increase them. If you have 100 that are not paying, there's the 100 that you can put in those areas. The one other discussion was not to have so many in one area, but they'd be spread out. That didn't occur either. I don't know if you want to go, but that's not on this. So anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi. I was just wondering.
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Katie Corrigan.
Katie.
I live in Tascadero, but my father owns a property here in Paso that my sister lives in, and in the T-zone. And I was curious, the length, the permit is good for 2 years, and then you have a chance to reapply, or does it go then to the waiting list for their chance to apply?
That's a question we'll ask. Get you for a second if you have other questions, though.
No, it was just suggesting that maybe we allow the waitlist people to maybe shorten the overall permit time so that the waitlist people have a chance to apply as well.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, Carolyn. Get in line there.
Linda Colwell, Hilltop Drive. Actually, I had nothing really, didn't think I would need to talk to anybody about any of this tonight, just came to listen. It's a little bit disappointing to realize that 2 out of 3, and I'm not even sure how much Mr. Strawn is aware of, but you seem very poorly versed on the ordinance. So if you don't know what the ordinance is about, I don't know how we're here tonight. I'm speaking for both owners and people that are simply live in the neighborhoods. It's really pretty startling. My recollection, and maybe somebody else out here might remember it differently, the reason that the T3s were allowed to be transferred, it was, you might say, how there was some compromises on this, that, and the other thing, such as limiting the R1 zones, because we have massive amounts on the west side. Some of our neighborhoods were truly deeply impacted, and it was really tough. So those are discussions long time ago. But the T3s, to me, if I remember correctly, came about because the people that had businesses that had, let's say, an apartment above their business, they said if they sold that business and that it made more sense to have the transfer of the short-term rental to go with it. And they were awarded that. So does anybody remember that any differently? Because that's as I remember it. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
I kind of
correct.
recall that too.
So see,
specific.
you guys are up there trying to vote on something that you really don't have the background for. There was a couple other points. Because I wasn't prepared for this. I was just trying to make really quick notes. Oh, and I think somebody, Mr. Strawn perhaps said that almost all of these are occupied. It's exactly the opposite. The home shares are the only ones that are primarily occupied. The bigger amount is the non-occupied. So I'm really disappointed. I don't think we can get a fair amount of information out for anybody, the people that have issues with it here tonight. I don't think they're going to get a fair chance at getting the right information. So anyway, there's lots more that could be discussed, but it doesn't seem to be that. It should only be about the two things we're talking about. And you guys are kind of off in the woods with the whole thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Welcome, Steve Gregory.
You could be nice if you want, Mayor. Just kidding. Just kidding you down. Can you please put up the graph of the number of units available? Please. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Steve Gregory. I live next to Dale Gusted. Okay. So I'm here to advocate first, do not allow any more vacation rentals in R1 zones, period. That's all I heard during all the hearings. And this is kind of my harebrained idea, but I'm going to say it anyway. You could technically reduce the number of non-hosted permits, allowable non-hosted permits, and whatever you reduce that by, you could put it in the T1 zone and wipe out the wait list for the TV zones. That was my idea originally. I just wanted to state it. I think that the transferability is an interesting question. I really don't care one way or the other, but I would like to see some kind of productivity of licenses or they lose their license. I don't know how you do it. We do it with building permits in the county, in the South County. If you don't perform or you don't produce, you lose your license. And I don't know how you get there or what the deal is on that, but those are the only two things I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Beth Burke. I have a permit. I pay my TOT. I live on Park Street, and I also work for Paso Robles Vacation Rentals. So you've got the full context. I wanted to suggest, first I wanted to thank you for what verges on an excellent short-term rental ordinance. As we watch cities just beginning to grapple with the topic today and heavy influence from hotel lobbying, and you all did a great job over several years crafting really a very good ordinance. Thank you. There were some compromises. I think part of the transferability of those T-zone permits was to drive short-term rental traffic into the T-zones because they're already mixed-use neighborhoods, and to not promote them in R1 and R2. I'm just surprised at the topic, reduction of short-term rental wait lists. Why? Wait lists are a courtesy, and if you talk about, for example, removing transferability of permits, you're suddenly prioritizing potential future stakeholders over existing stakeholders who are already performing for you. So I'm a little confused why this is a priority, maybe a different priority if we're going to talk about short-term rentals would be supporting effective short-term rentals that are also good neighbors and enjoying not only the TOT revenue, but the boosts to restaurants, wine tasting, retail in the community. Fine-tuning the ordinance if issues have arisen. Improving on the host compliance hotline experience for both short-term rental owners and neighbors. I'm just confused why, if you're going to bring short-term rentals back up, this was the topic that you chose. I advocate if no income is being produced, no TOT, that is not in the spirit of the ordinance. To get a permit and not use it is not the intent. And I would really advocate for letting those lapse over time. From my professional experience, I would suggest that one of your parameters for decision-making is that you not choose any option that suddenly floods neighborhoods and the market with a lot of new short-term rentals. So work with the ones you've got, make them better. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff Carr, Paso Robles. I'm glad I followed that speaker. She took the words right out of my mouth as far as the title of this item. It just seemed, I didn't understand the waitlist people were in such a hardship right now that we had to work on that. So it just seemed very suspicious to me. So my little skeptical mind was, well, what's the real target we're trying to work on here? Is it, 1.2 million is not enough, or is it, or what? I'm not sure exactly, but I don't agree with raising any of the caps. That's for sure. And I don't, maybe in the T zones, I'm not that familiar with it, but in R1, I still feel R1 should slowly be eliminated. And you could eliminate the wait list today, as far as I'm concerned, on R1, and then let that dwindle down. It'll take, if it ever happens, it would take decades probably. I don't know, whatever the real estate market says, dictates. But as far as the transfers, yeah, I was actually in T3, I always thought that was a decent idea if there was a criteria for it. Like that person was, showing that this was a business and not just even a hobby, or just something they do every 3 months. But it actually had some other parameters around it that actually that focused it more on a business rather than just a home that they rent out once in a while on a weekend. So I'm not totally against that, but it is a way to eliminate some of the wait list. If you eliminate those transfers, that is one way. As far as the inactive short-term rentals, yeah, that's another one that I think is another option as well. That's a little tricky as on setting the right parameters for that, and trying to define why they're not active. But if they haven't been active for years, I guess that's kind of less of a question on those. But ultimately, I think the things were working okay as they were. I would have liked to have, again, still see less non-hosted permits and even home share permits in R1. I just think R1 has always been a location for single-family homes, where families live, where communities start, and it didn't have all the businesses in there. And so what we're doing here is a little foreign to me, and I'm still not used to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? Welcome.
Good evening, Monty Jones. There's a couple questions, obviously, you alluded to, what are we doing here for the permit, the wait list? It's just a little confusing. There's no data on how long the people have been on the wait list. I mean, if it's 5 years and they're itching to get on, that's one thing. But if it's, they're waiting 45 days or 6 months, I mean, this seems like, government solution for a government problem, add it to the list. There's an assumption you made, Ty, Mr. Lewis, on the T-zone transferability of the wait list. If they weren't transferable, you assume that 15 that were transferred would not then get back on the wait list. But if we assume that, if I say, well, yeah, I'll assume they'll all go back on the wait list, we're still at 34 and we're back to square zero. So I'm strongly against ending the T-zone transferability. There's legal ramifications, I assume here, very seriously, in terms of California takings clause issues. When there's a fixed dollar amount on a property, for example, that I bought before the wait list, but there was a transferability there. I mean, if you're going to take $200,000 out of my pocket because you're changing the rules, I assume there's going to be a lot of angry people in this town in the T-zone with that same issue. I strongly urge you to, my only concern here is the T-zone transferability. I strongly urge you to reconsider that recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Hello, Matt Lindroth.
Yeah.
You might be surprised. I'm a short-term property management owner. You might be surprised to know that I also oppose, like some of my peers, the addition of additional licenses for a number of reasons. One, it obviously creates more supply, which dilutes the overall pool. There's less investment by the owners when they're not making as much money on the properties that they're renting. It can create vacation rental dead zones, which take away the character of our very unique neighborhoods within Paso Robles, the charm that comes along with it, the ability to walk downtown. It takes all that away. Additionally, you have referenced affordability in rental homes in this town. The addition of more permits for short-term rentals only removes long-term rentals from this town, because there will be people buying here who want to stay here sometimes as an owner, but rent it out when they're not. So that's going to remove long-term rental access to people who need it. This is a very large service industry town, and people who work here need affordable housing. With more short-term rentals, you remove long-term rentals. Now, full disclosure, I also own 2 permits in the T-zone with the transferability clause. I want to make sure that people understand that there may seem to be a little bit of privilege that goes along with having this particular permit and the value that comes with it. But I also want people to understand I wouldn't have purchased the homes I did in that zone had I not been able to have that transferability. I also made significant investments when I purchased that property in those homes. I built a second home on one of the pieces of property. And I also was required to put in $80,000 worth of sidewalks that improved the city. So I don't want people to think that people who have these permits just benefit from having them. I made significant investment, and I'm sure many of the people who have these transferability permits have done the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, do we have anyone online?
Yes, first caller is Lisa McCanio.
Okay, Lisa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. So some vacation rentals are located in commercial zones, and in commercial zone, I mean the TC zone, which we could run any commercial business in our location. And we're not just a mixed use. We're not just approved for duplexes or triplexes. We're actually commercial zones. And so I want the city council to remember that back 3-4 years ago when we spoke about this, when we drafted the ordinance that's now in place, that there are actual hardcore commercial zones where vacation rentals are right across the street from restaurants and breweries and et cetera, that if I ran a different kind of business in this exact property, I could sell it as a business. So before we decide to make commercial zones not able to transfer as an STR to another owner if I so desire to sell my unit, let's just remember that if I ran any other kind of business in this exact zone where I'm located, I could sell it as any other business, but maybe not an STR. That would be discrimination, and that would pose a large legal situation between owners of STRs in commercial zones and the city. So I would just like to remind us that we all spoke of that 4 or 5 years ago. I also agree that increasing the residential permits in the R1 zones, and we were trying to limit those. We were trying to get those down so that people with big, large houses didn't have to live next to loud people in hot tubs and pools. And that all seemed to be copacetic at the time, many 4 or 5 years ago when we all talked about it. So I think there's a lot of things to consider between hardcore commercial zones, R1 zones, mixed use zones that we need to really consider, especially when it comes to transferable or increasing the amount of permits. I mean, I think 325 permits in a town is quite a lot. So that's what I have to say.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Carolyn Demuke.
Carolyn, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is Carolyn Dismuke, 1601 Pine Street. I just wanted to ask two questions. Getting the occasional long-term tenant is the nature of this business. It may only happen once or twice a year, but we occasionally get bookings for 60 or 90-day bookings, and we submit exemptions with when our TOT tax is due, but it doesn't mean we should lose a license or it should become inactive. So can we be specific about how you plan to mark a specific short-term rental as inactive and how that's done? If it's several years, of course, understood. But in my case, it happens once or twice a year, and it's just for several months at a time. And then my other question is about previous drafts of the ordinance had pretty tough rules for home shares. Home share owners were restricted from going to work during a booking or even leaving the house. And so consider how many legit home shares had to request non-hosted permits because their jobs prevented them from being housebound during those bookings. And like my aforementioned question, some of those are lengthy. So please re-clarify the current rules that define home shares so that you can free up some non-hosted permits, and then your numbers would be more accurate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next caller is Kirk McCagnon.
Chris, can you hear us?
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to piggyback on some of the callers that are commenting specifically on the transferability of the T1 zone permits. I'm trying to make notes as I go here, so I really didn't have anything prepared, so I'm maybe a little all over the map, so I'm going to apologize ahead. So I specifically bought a property 10 years ago in a commercial zone. I bought that property so I could run a business. At the time, it wasn't necessarily going to be a short-term rental, but that's what it developed into. So I believe I'm in the T1 zone, which is in the heart of downtown. So if I owned a salon or a restaurant or even a tattoo shop, I would have the ability to sell my business when I chose to leave. I believe the city council needs to think about that and realize that this business that I've had now for 8 to 10 years that I've developed and worked hard at, you are cutting my legs off, cutting me off at the knees, and not allowing me to transfer my permit to another business owner. Discrimination is a really, thrown about a lot these days, but I feel like the city would be discriminating against me as a business owner to not be allowed to sell my business. So if there are 4 or 5 T zones that are transferable, some of those seem to be more in the residential areas. Perhaps what you guys need to do is review the individual T zones and shrink that down and find out which ones are more in the residential areas or the R2s or R3s that are impacting the local residents, as 4 or 5 years ago, that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to craft an ordinance that was not going to impact the residential neighborhoods. I'm not in a residential neighborhood. So I think as a city council member, I would like to think about the potential litigation that you guys may be bringing on the city if you do not prevent commercial business owners the ability to sell the businesses they've built. I appreciate your time. I hope you guys can come up with the right decision. And maybe if you guys can't, maybe you guys need a little more information tonight. Maybe you need to put this on hold, gather a little bit more data. I think Linda Caldwell said that you guys were kind of off in the ditch. And, maybe you guys need a little bit more information and data before you actually vote on this tonight, especially since there's only 3 of you and one of you's pulled out of a hat. Thank you for your time.
I resemble that remark. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Thanks, John.
Next, I have Kathy Kelly.
Kathy, can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Yes, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'm piggybacking on a few of the comments as well. First of all, you guys have put together a great ordinance that is working, and I don't think that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I think you're, like this last man said, you're going to get yourself into trouble by not doing the transfer of the T-zones. Secondly, I do agree with the eliminating the inactive permits. However, as one of the other ladies stated, there's a new segment of the market called midterm rentals, which we do rent out homes for 30 to 90 days, depending on what's going on. I've got several homes that are being rented out right now for like 30 to even a year, which they all have permits. But yet what's happening is that we've got people coming into the city that are working here for 3 months. They rent a short-term rental, they leave, or their home's being renovated, they rent a short-term rental, and then they go back to their home. So you do have to be careful on both ends. First, that when you do eliminate the inactive permits, I think it has to be for a substantial amount of time, which would be very helpful, because I am number 1 on the list, on the wait list for the R1 zone for one of my clients. And secondly, the transfer of the T-zone permits, I think you would be getting yourself into trouble, as Monty said. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is Dan Jones.
Stan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's Dan Jones, 2 Wood Drive. And you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I had the privilege to be on both of the committees that researched out and helped formulate the ordinance that you have. And the thing that I'm also kind of concerned with is that, you know, you're worried about, it seems like you're worried about these 88 people that are on the wait list. But one thing that I would like to bring up is that you have hundreds of hotel rooms that are coming on in the next couple of years, you know, are going to produce a lot more TOT. So I think if the city is only worried about the amount of TOT that they're going to be produced, 88 is not going to come anywhere close to the amount of money that's going to be produced by these hundreds of rooms that are going to be available within the next 2 years. Also, we have settled, you know, a long time ago that on a non-hotel, and I know it started up whenever we grandfathered everybody in way over 100. It has come down basically that agreed upon. I think that R1 left alone with any of your considerations. T-zone transfer, I think that I agree with everybody else. You know, if you were business, I think have a business.
Dan?
Yes.
We're getting about every third, fourth word. Can you summarize in short sentences of what your points are, please?
Okay. Yeah. Points are: 1, going to have enough rooms coming on board with your hotel rooms in the next 2 years to offset anything that 88 or 88 people on a wait list would ever produce.
Yeah.
That's my main point.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Melissa, do we have anyone else?
No other callers.
Very good. Okay. Then we'll bring it back. There's several questions here. Warren, I was hoping you could kind of help me copy some of this. I think the most well, the one I wrote down most was the home share rules. Is there a way we can maybe get an explanation real quick on the overview of that?
So home share means that the owner of the permit is occupying the unit or the property at the same time it's being rented out as a short-term rental. So that's the underlying definition of home share. The council did create a provision where that owner operator could be not on the property up to 30 days per year to deal with vacations and work and things like that. So that's kind of how home share works currently.
Okay. All right. Were there any others that you recorded as far as?
There was a question about the term of the permits. It's a 3-year permit that we issue.
Is it 3 or I thought it was 2?
3.
Okay. All right. All right. Then we'll bring it back then to council then for discussion. Who wants to start off on this? Brett?
Well, I know what the title of the item is shortening the short-term rental wait list. Now, one of the ways to do that is to eliminate transferability, because then those permits can be used. However, I'm very concerned and have been all along with the massive complaints coming in from the R1 zone. That's where the complaints come from. I haven't heard complaints from any of the other zones. R1 is the big one. Somewhat, a little bit maybe in R2, but just similar to R1. Duplexes possibly. Anyway, so I'm more concerned about non-hosted permits in the R zones, R1 and R2, whether it has a T in front of it or not. It's R1 or R2. That's what I'm concerned with. And I would really like to maybe have those to be non-transferable. I have no problem with transferability on all the others. I look at non-hosted permitted homes as mini hotels. They're really hotel rooms, but they're a different style hotel. And I know my family, when they come to town, they always go into one of these because it has a kitchen, it has the type of amenities that you get in some hotels that have kitchen space and almost small living units that they rent out in hotels. Hyatt Place is an example of that. It's not like the Hyatt Regency or some of the other Hyatt hotels. It's Hyatt Place where you come in and you have a little tiny apartment for a very short-term period. Possibly I could see another thing too with some of this situation that was mentioned in the testimony, and that is redefining short-term so that we have a full fee if it's rented for 2 weeks or less, but we have a reduced fee if it's rented for more than 2 weeks, but less than 6 months.
Oh, stand by. Let's get this cleared up, because there was plenty of, short term is anything less than 29 days. Is that correct, staff? Anything beyond that is long term.
Yeah, I think at 30 days it becomes a long-term rental. It's not subject to the TOT.
Okay, I can live with the 30 days, but I still think these situations we're talking about where people come in and they're only staying for 2 months or 3 months.
Council, I do have to caution you that this item was brought back at Mr. Gregory's request, specifically addressing how to clear up the waiting list.
Okay.
So if we start going beyond the scope of that, right, we probably need to bring that back.
Okay, this discussion then I would like to have come back for further look at.
If there's 3 of you that want to bring this back, then we can bring it back. But for now, we're limiting this to Mr. Gregory's request to reduce the list.
In that case, go back to just my first 2 remarks. I would like to see the R1 and R2 permits to be non-transferable.
That's already that way.
They are?
Yeah.
Okay, the other zones should be transferable. I think they should be in any commercial zone, because hotels aren't just in T zones. Hotels are in commercial zones. These are mini hotels. If they're in a commercial zone, they're a business. If they're going to be a business, you've got to be able to transfer your business license. I agree with the testimony that we heard in that regard. And I don't think it matters whether it's a T zone or whether it's out at Target or where else it is. If it's in a commercial zone where it's commercial activity, it's a business, then it should be a transferable business, in my view.
Okay, let me get something clear real quick to Warren once he finishes his thought there. TC means town center plan, basically. And T1 is basically the downtown core. Then it goes on out with 2s and 3s on further. Is that the way we read the planning land use?
So the T zones are only in the uptown zone, which is a historic grid.
Yep.
Downtown is TC1.
Yes.
Which is pedestrian retail. Then beyond that, we have TC2, which is more general commercial. It's more permissive of office and non-pedestrian uses. Then after that, we have T4. T4, there's a variety of different mixes allowed in T4. It's kind of an apartment to light commercial mixed use zone. And then finally, we have T3, which has a multiple variations, but it's more kind of a duplex
R2s
kind of zone.
Right, exactly. That's where you start getting into the residential part of the town center plan.
Yeah, most of like Vine Street is T3 as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guess that's the one which I'd really like to see become non-transferable.
It's currently transferable.
It is currently transferable.
Anything in the T zone's transferable.
Yeah. Again, let's listen to Councilman Bausch for a minute.
Okay.
Fred, I would really like to just refer this back to Elizabeth and just get a review of that. The callers that called in threat and litigation, they may have a point, and this whole thing may just go away because the way that the application was written, we wouldn't be able to change it without compensating the current license holder. However, there might also be bias because the R1s weren't compensated for the same reason. So I think it needs to be reviewed at least and then bring back for that decision to be made. I don't necessarily agree with you that these are mini hotels. I don't think we can validate the transferability because they're mini hotels. I think it needs to be reviewed, bring it back, and we can make that decision at that point.
Well, let me clarify. I said non-hosted permits only.
Non-hosted
means there is nobody living in them, really.
I think any transferability, I think there needs to be a consistent policy across the board, is what I'm getting to.
I think the home share permits are a totally different thing.
I don't think they're transferable.
That's where we disagree.
Are they transferable now?
They're not transferable, but there's no limit, so there's no value really to them because they're unlimited.
Right. So just to the point that they're transferable should be reviewed. I'm not saying we should eliminate it. I think it should be reviewed and get a better clarification from legal counsel and then make a decision.
Just to clarify, Mr. Bausch, are you suggesting that you want a legal opinion on the on expanding or whether our current, I don't understand the legal review.
I don't want to
the question that I heard, I'm sorry. I think the question that I heard from Councilmember Bausch was, is there a vested right in the transferability that the existing people in the T1 T zone currently have?
Correct.
And I believe the answer to that is no. I don't believe there is. They have a permit. The permit's good for 2 years. It's renewable, but it doesn't guarantee them the transferability.
3 years.
I would need to go back and, I'm sorry, 3 years. But I'm happy to go back and research that and confirm that. That's just sort of my off the cuff analysis. But we're happy to take a look at that if that's the desire of the council.
Thank you.
Okay, so my take on this is to stay focused on the issue at hand, and that is the waiting list and how to deal with it or not, which we cannot, or if we can just say we're not going to do anything, we're just going to leave it the way it is, or there is an opportunity here then to discuss how we might want to adjust the quantities of the waiting list in certain zones, correct?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
With all due respect, I think with Mr. Bausch's position, we're not going to be able to make that decision either way.
Well,
I think if we refer it back to staff and have them bring it back as a review of the short-term rental ordinance and policies, combination that we can address all of these different aspects of it and come up with something that's going to work better.
The idea of looking at the transferability
right
might, I mean, it would still take a long time, but that would increase, well, actually, it would reduce the wait time by some small amount.
So if we want to move forward with this particular item, my thought, and I was continuing, is that if the idea here is to reduce the waiting list and how we're going to do that in certain types of zones, then again, staff needs to research how it can be done legally, and then we bring it back to further discuss, if we want to do it or not. Because again, we don't have all the tools here at this point to discuss it.
If we can have three people who would agree that we want to really reduce the R1 use, the use of R1 for this type of use, period, and get it below even that 75, then we have to bring the whole thing back, not just the transferability.
And I would caution council to consider it this way too. The primary question is, do you want to reduce or eliminate the lists? And if so, what tool would you like us to research to do that? It's a completely different topic to bring it back and say we just want to review our ordinance and see if it's contemporary.
Don't want to get into the ordinance that much, but legally, if we're going to address the wait list, then it sounds like we need a legal opinion on how to do that, correct?
If it's council's desire to address anything to do with the list, then you would tell us the tools that you're interested to learn more. This has originally gone by Beth Beskin-Krieger and Elizabeth's team. There are paths that council could go down, whether they're appealing or not, as another topic based upon the amount of public input that you've received here. If you indulge in any of those tools, I would probably recommend the series of public workshops, because I'm guessing you're going to get a lot of feedback and a lot of emails on this. And the more you open it up for their voices to be heard, the better. I don't know that there is a huge representation here tonight, just as a word of caution.
Yeah. Go ahead.
For the same reason that I'd want to know if it's advisable or legal to eliminate transferability. I'm not saying I want to go down that path. I just want to know if it's legal to do so. We can decide if it's advisable at a later date. But I think what's up on the screen now, revoking or declining renewal of inactive short-term rental permits, is that legal or advisable? Because that could involve litigation as well. I don't know.
I don't believe you have. I don't believe any of the current short-term rental people have a vested right in these permits. So if you were to revise the ordinance or direct us to go back and look at that to change, for example, the renewal of abilities for inactive short-term rental permits, we have looked at those issues and we believe that these are things that you can do. I don't have a legal opinion for you on that tonight. I can certainly provide you with one. But these are options that we have preliminarily looked at.
Elizabeth, I'd also like any examples from that might be available from other cities. If it was just immediate, or if there was a sunset period of let people know we're not going to do it upon renewal. We'll give you one more time, and then you can decide something like along those lines if that's a good practice or not a good practice.
Okay. I'm not aware of any like that, but I think Warren and his staff may be, or we can certainly look into it.
Thank you.
All right, so to move forward here, we definitely have to have a 3-0 vote to do anything. So
To table this?
yeah, or
Or direct staff?
No, there should be directions what they're asking for, Chris. So if you feel like you want to move forward on this item, then we need to make a vote, of course, that we want to pursue it, and then direct staff in a motion on how you want to have it come back.
How do you feel about increasing the number of non-hosted? I'm not comfortable increasing anything.
It depends on what zone.
Well, I think that's two questions.
Right.
Okay. And that's why I think when we get to council comment later, that's when 3 people can request that the whole ordinance be brought back for additional.
Yeah, that's another way to do it.
But that we can't do it on this item, is what we're being advised. On this item, we could just send it back to staff for the legal opinions that you want, and then bring it back to deal with just this issue. At that time, if we're going to bring the other back totally, we could refer it into that discussion if that's what you choose. But those are the choices I see.
Yeah, I agree. So at this point then, do we have a motion then? We want to have anything further with this item or take no action at all? Discussion.
I'm willing to support the suggestion of getting the legal opinions that Mr. Bausch wants.
Great.
I think and then we'll come back later for Mr. Strong. So I'll move to seek legal counsel to eliminate future short-term rental permit transfers within the T-zones, and to seek legal counsel to revoke or decline renewal of inactive short-term rental permits.
No, I'll second that.
Okay, the third item there wasn't addressed. You're okay?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just 2 items that you want to have staff come back with?
Yes.
Okay, that's the motion. Any discussion on that item?
No.
Okay. Go ahead and call for the question then on that, Melissa.
Councilmember Bausch?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Hammond?
No, I think if we're going to do something here, we need to include the non-hosted STRs to reduce the R1s, basically.
I'll make that motion.
So including...
Increasing the number?
No, reducing the R1s. In other words, it says non-hosted STR permits within prospective zones, meaning, in my opinion, we want to reduce R1. That would be my point if we come to this again. How can we reduce the R1 STRs?
We can bring it back as a legal opinion.
Yeah, it's just a legal opinion how that could be done. We're not making any
decisions
on it.
Okay.
That's the way.
So,
Go ahead, Liz.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to stifle your conversation here. So I think we had a motion with the 2 asking us to come back with additional direction or information on the first 2 items there, eliminating future short-term rental permit transfers within T-zones, and then the revoking or declining the renewal of inactive permits. And that motion passed 2-1.
No, it did not pass because we need 3 votes. We need a unanimous vote.
It didn't pass. We have to have a 3-0, correct? So it basically
2 votes can't pass it. So therefore, we're adding this other item in with those in a new motion. We're keeping those, but adding in the STR permits.
Okay. So I think for simplicity, so there's a couple of things happening here. You're only providing direction to staff.
Right.
And so it's not an ordinance. It doesn't require 3-0. You can make a motion and just have a 2-1 pass because it's just direction. It's not an ordinance.
Right.
So you could just stop right here. But what I'm hearing is I think the motion that you're really interested in is directing staff to come back with additional information on the viability, the legal viability of the first two, and then options as it relates to the non-hosted STR permits in residential zones.
Yes.
Yes. That's what I'm asking to have him talk about.
And that's the motion I made.
So it's up to Chris if he wants to.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, just, so that's the motion.
All
and
right,
a second.
so I think we've got a first by Strong, a second by Bausch.
Hammond.
Is that what I heard?
Hammond.
Hammond. And so then we just need to vote on the supplemental motion.
Right.
Yes.
No
Go
further
ahead.
discussion?
Go ahead. Well,
no discussion.
Go ahead, Melissa. Call for the question.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Bausch?
No.
And that motion passes 2-1.
All right. So then I'm going to make a motion that we just leave this whole item alone, take no action, and leave the STRs as is.
We just took an action.
No, well, I guess if you, okay, the first, basically per Elizabeth, I guess the first option with 2-1 would have given staff direction to do it. So,
Right. So Elizabeth.
That's going to come back.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Elizabeth gives staff.
Okay.
Later on, Fred will ask.
Okay. All right. So Elizabeth, then based on that first motion that did pass 2-1, are we good at this point, or do we need to remake that motion to do it official?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay.
I think you've passed two motions. The first one included just the first two. The second motion included all three things that you would like additional information on.
That's right, because I guess it did work. Still 2-1. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very good. I'm getting confused on this 3-0 thing, but all right. Good to go at this point. So this is now complete until we have to hear it again. Okay. Right. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll get Councilman Gregory and Councilman Roden back up on the dais. All right, moving on. Item M, City Manager Report. Ty Lewis, do you have something for us tonight?
I'm exhausted. No.
Okay. Moving on then to City Council Business and Committee Reports. Maybe on my far left, it's Sharon Roden.
Well, my life has slowed down just a little bit for a moment. I did meet with Angelica about the community services briefing. And within that, we talked about what we talked about tonight was the strategic plan for the unhoused. And also, I met Eric with the library and took a tour of the library. That was very enjoyable and entertaining. One other thing that I wanted to bring up on the radio last week was that they're looking for someone who might want to donate a Sprinter van or, one of the high top vans, Ecoliner or whatever, for a bookmobile. So they can utilize it throughout the city. So if anybody's out there who wants to do that, please contact Angelica or Eric.
Very good. Councilman Strong.
Yes, it's been a relatively quiet time since our last meeting. However, I am going to be in a SLOCOG meeting and RTA meeting tomorrow, and we'll be talking about additional money for our Union Road overpass. Now that's being proposed that we get even more money to help us, and that will help. And then I'm meeting with CalCog down for a statewide meeting down in Riverside on Friday. And we'll be going over some of the same issues at a statewide basis. Other than that, I am going to request that, see if there are two other people who would like to see us bring back the short-term rental ordinance itself to look at some possible changes in definitions or minor alterations.
Okay, does anybody have any will to do something like that? You would? Okay.
And again, that would be limited to just the 3 people who are authorized or, not conflicted on short-term rentals.
Okay, so John, you're the deciding on that one then.
Yeah, I personally, Fred, I don't think we need to do that. We've heard testimony that it's working well. Everybody seems to be moving with it. I am concerned a little bit about the fact that people are not using their entitlements. But that's something that we're going to address on this other item. So I'd say no, I personally do not think we should get into it unless the public wishes to weigh in on that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Councilman Bausch, are you available or ready? We can go to...
We heard tonight, this has come up in the past, and I was asked to note, we got a lot of endorsements tonight from, I'll call them institutions for lack of a better term, without picking on anybody, that's not the intention here, but from institutions that receive substantial amounts of money from the city. And it might be in the interest of just complete transparency when they are endorsing projects, that it might be wise in the interest of transparency for them to identify that they are recipients of money from the city. I'm just putting that out there to see what you guys think about that.
Talking about?
Well, we had the support for the homeless manager, for example. We were on your committee, right? So we got letters of support from several of those organizations. They called in. And that's happened in the past in other meetings. And so it's been noted that, and not everybody is aware that they receive money from the city coffers. So it just might be interesting, just to, again, in the era of transparency.
Mr. Bausch, I think that as a council member, any one of you can ask that question of anybody commenting at any time, or clarify.
Really that's a good point. I don't want it to sound like a third degree. I think that might be something if, I mean, I can, if that's what you want me to do. Do you think that's appropriate?
If you feel it is, I think it's important that you ask
How
questions.
would I ask that question? How much money did you get from the city this year? Is that appropriate?
Well, I'll ask staff to reiterate that, but yeah, I think transparency is important.
Yeah, from our standpoint, of course you can ask whatever you like. I think that the question is the relevancy. There's a lot of organizations pass through money between the county and the city, and to go through that. I think just from a practical standpoint, you might find yourself mired down in a lot more information than you bargained for. If there's particular groups that are NGOs or those kind of things that you're particularly concerned, and what I'm hearing is you're inferring a bias that there's a bias from the funding that they're getting.
I'm just passing along comments that I've heard from constituents.
Understood.
Yeah, that was my question: is what is your concern?
Just passing it along.
So disclosure to me is the most important thing, Chris.
Transparency.
I'll tell you my concern.
So, one second, Fred, I'm speaking.
Yeah.
If somebody writes a letter of support and they say where they're from, it's the responsibility of the listener to judge that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And like in that group of people in that strategic plan, for example, there was a lot of people that give us money,
mm-hmm.
and we give money to.
Correct.
And they're fully disclosed in all of their applications where they're from. So I think that if that's the important thing is if somebody gets on the air and says, I'm from Echo or I'm from Haslo or I'm from wherever, and I want to support this plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. And everybody tonight spoke that way.
Correct.
And both people in their letters wrote that in their letters, where they're from. So I think that disclosure is the most important thing so that people can make that choice themselves. So, but that's my opinion.
Thank you.
And my concern would be this, unless that same question is asked of every single person who speaks, then who that question is asked of and who it is not asked of could also be considered influencing the outcome. So I think you're on a short dock.
Well, again, each councilman has a prerogative to ask questions that he feels is important. So, again, that's important that we have that freedom, that you can always research the item the way you feel appropriate.
I'll share that back. So thank you.
Okay. Councilman Grigger.
Yeah. I just like to say that I've never sang next to anybody more rowdy than somebody on this diocese on that night of the lighting of the lights. But, oh, sorry, Sharon. I want to also say that that was the nicest lighting ceremony I think I've been to since I've lived here. The amount of lights and the character of everything and the participation. I mean, I was even singing loud. I could hear myself sing. So that's getting exciting. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody who had anything to do with that. It was wonderful. And I am going to make a recommendation, as a council recommendation, if the other members would join me. I would like to see more lighting in the trees in the park year round. It is magical.
I agree.
And so many people have said to me, and you know, my daughters and granddaughters are there. Everybody was there and saying the same thing. It was so much fun. I even had Tony Gaspard come up and shake my hand and say, wow. So I said, I want to thank everybody for doing what they did. It was a blast. So thank you for that. And I hope everybody has a very safe and happy new year.
Yeah, I'll agree on the things that I saw that night was amazing. I walked across and looked. There was more people I've ever seen before. Plus, again, as you said, the lighting is getting so spectacular. Of course, thanks to the Cancer Society and everyone who's donating to that to make that park transform during this period of Christmas. And again, I can only say it's just one more attribute why people, you know, it's our hometown. This is what we want to see. So it's important that we contribute to that in any way we can.
One other thing, John.
Yes.
I had a ball on the trolley.
Well,
Christmas parade was just phenomenal. I couldn't believe how many people came out for that.
That's where I was going next. This Christmas parade was
about that.
great. I mean, same way. Every year it seems like the streets are getting more clogged, and it's amazing. Everybody really wants to participate and come out. And thank you for riding the trolley, everybody. It was perfect. We also have the Vine Street coming this Saturday, right? So
yes, and I'd like to, number one, say I wasn't here for the lighting because I was with family Thanksgiving back east, but I'm not going to be here for Vine Street. The same reason, because I'll be out of town with family.
We'll miss you.
But when I went on the trolley for the Christmas parade, and that was the first time I'd seen the night lights at night, it blew me away. So I totally agree with all your comments.
Yeah, our park is going to definitely be everyone, just like the Cambria lights. People go over there, they'll be coming to Paso now to take a look at our lights. The only other thing I had, again, meetings-wise, county-wise, was an ABCD meeting last week. And the other thing I wanted to bring up real quick, and I put this in front of you, this is something that I'd like for council to look at and see if there's interest that we can direct staff to bring this back. This is a part of the wayfinding signage program that Planning Commission did, and Dwayne Picanso back in the day, he and I got this going with regard to the Service Club sign, and it's a design that was coming up with from Pierre Rademacher, and it's something that we could have, at least the way it's currently sitting, 2 locations approved. But if we bring this back, we can get into it deeper. But if you can review this information, you can talk with Ty. If you guys feel like you want to get into this and see how we can actually get it accomplished, please review it, talk with Ty, and here's the file that we have. So that's all I'll say. Okay, upcoming events. We have the Paso Robles Youth Commission Advisory Committee meeting Wednesday, tomorrow, the 6th, and that's 5:30. We have the Santa Sleigh at Centennial Park. That's tomorrow at 6 o'clock p.m. I believe the police department handles that. And then the Santa Sleigh again is going to be at the Oak Park area, December 7th, Thursday, at 6 p.m. We have the Airport Commission meeting this Thursday's at 6:30 at the terminal at the airport. Paso Robles Senior Citizens Advisory Committee meeting December 11th, Monday of next week, 1:30. Paso Robles Development Review Committee also Monday the 11th at 3:30 here at City Hall. Then we have the Paso Robles Park and Recreation Advisory Committee regular meeting December 11th at 4 p.m. And then the Planning Commission is meeting here in this room December 12th at 6:30. Library Board of Trustees, December 14th, 9 o'clock in the morning. Paso Robles Development Review Committee again on December 18th, 3:30 here in the City Hall. Paso Robles Joint City Council and Airport Commission. This is going to be a big meeting. December 19th, we're going to be at 5:15, I believe here, all right? And then on that same day, right afterwards, then we're going to have our City Council meeting at 6:30. So that's what we have on calendar coming up. Anybody else have anything further to discuss? If not, I definitely want to, this will be, this holiday season, so get out and shop. We really want to encourage everybody to shop local. That's what it's about, to support our merchants and everybody we can. So until then, make a motion then to adjourn.
So
Anybody?
moved.
So first by Councilman Gregory. Anybody second? Councilman Roden, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.